Chapter 1574. A powerful figure? Dustless stared at Vatler. As a true ancestor, Akatsuki Koju was already a powerful figure. Judging from Vatler's arrogant tone, it was obvious that he had devoured an existence stronger than Akatsuki Koju. You didn't devour the first true ancestor, did you? Everyone stared at Vatler, tongue-tied. After devouring 2 true ancestor-level vampires in succession, it was easy to imagine Vatler's strength. He definitely soared to the heavens in a single bound. Ha 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 ha. As expected of my old enemy. Hearing this, Vatler laughed maniacally. His arms trembled as he shouted, "Yes, thanks to you and Xion de Muaya's interference in the War King's domain, all of our powers were suppressed. All vampires, whether they were nobles or vampires from the apocalypse, were turned into ordinary humans. True ancestors were no exception. I took advantage of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to devour the first true ancestor, and at the same time, Akatsuki Koju became my meal." Ha ha ha. At the end of his sentence, Vatler let out a maniacal laugh. Life is unpredictable. I didn't expect you to be the one to benefit. Dustless sighed. He didn't expect this to happen. Through the Tensigan, Dustless could see the majestic demonic energy in Vatler's body. After devouring 2 true ancestors, Vatler's strength had surpassed that of a true ancestor. It seems that you are the biggest winner. Dustless sighed. Ordinary people would be scared to even see a true ancestor, let alone devouring a true ancestor. Vatler's success wasn't without reason. Don't you feel like you shot yourself in the foot? Ha ha. This is all thanks to you, Mr. Old Enemy. Vatler laughed maniacally. He opened his eyes wide and stared at Wu Chen, trying to catch a glimpse of pain on his face. However, Wu Chen did not move at all. There was no change in his expression. Shot myself in the foot? Are you an idiot? Wu Chen sneered unreservedly. Although your appearance is unexpected, it can barely relieve my boredom. In this boring life, only the existence of a clown like you can make me feel the joy and value of living. Even if you are arrogant, you should know when to stop. Do you think I am still the old me? Wrong, a big mistake. Vatler said arrogantly. As long as I want to, you won't even have time to react. Bang, bang, bang. Before Vatler finished his sentence, an explosion sounded in the air. Boom, boom, crack, crack. Vatler's abdomen caved in. His abdomen was almost penetrated through his chest. Vatler's face was contorted in pain. The immense pain caused his body to lose support, and he rolled on the ground in agony. How can you defeat me? Vatler looked at the approaching black figure. His expression was cold and filled with disdain and disdain. It was as if he was looking at an insect. Vatler's pride was hurt and he roared, "Sorcery, you must have used some sorcery. A mere bat. You seem to have lost your sense of measure. Do you really think the so-called true ancestors are invincible? Do you really think you can fight me after devouring 2 true ancestors? Let me tell you, even if I devour 100 true ancestors, I can still easily destroy you. You don't even know who is standing in front of you, and you still think you can defeat me?" The sound of rolling thunder exploded in the boundless horizon. The surroundings were dead silent, dead silent. A few hundred years ago, I stepped into a realm you cannot imagine. To be honest, I don't even know how strong I am now. Dustless grabbed Vatler's head and stared at his caved-in abdomen. His fingertips emitted large amounts of light. Crack, crack, crack. A huge flash of light crackled, and the surrounding space twisted and was shattered by the energy ball. Then Dustless threw Vatler into the distant sky like he was throwing trash. A huge energy ball appeared along with it. Wang Su's flash. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A huge silver beam of light pierced through the sky, and the space in its path exploded, leaving a conspicuous trace as it rushed towards Vatler. Boom, boom, boom. The void flash suddenly exploded, and the blue sky was covered by a flash of light. Everyone hurriedly closed their eyes, or else they might be blinded by the light. Gulp. The girls choked and looked at Dustless in shock. It was the first time they had seen Dustless go crazy. Cold sweat flowed down their backs, and the overwhelming power made them gasp for breath. When a strong person's strength reached a certain level, they would develop a unique aura. Just like the Haoshiku Haki, it had a powerful deterrent force. I didn't hit him. After that kid swallowed 2 true ancestors, His strength really increased. I almost pierced his abdomen, but he could still escape. Unbelievable. Not only did his strength increase, but his body's recovery also increased. A cold voice suddenly sounded. Dustless turned around and saw that it was Nagisa. No, it was more appropriate to call her Aurora. TSK TSK TSK. This is going to be a good show. This guy swallowed Akatsuki Koju and indirectly angered Aurora. Dustless gloated. In fact, he wanted to thank Vatler. He was worried about how to get rid of Akatsuki Koju without Aurora noticing, and now Vatler had helped him a lot. He took the initiative to take the blame for Dustless. Sure enough, male protagonists were often the best scapegoats. Chapter 1575. Dustless was quite excited. He had guessed that Vatler would kill Koju, but that was only after Koju had awakened all of his familiars. He didn't expect Vatler to be so eager to devour Koju, which indirectly angered Aurora. But staring at the raging Aurora, Dustless hesitated. Vatler was no longer the same as before. Not only did he devour Akatsuki Koju, but he also used the power of the Dark Oath Book to devour the first true ancestor. With the power of 2 true ancestors, his strength would inevitably increase. Would Aurora be his match? Aurora, I advise you not to humiliate yourself. You're not my target. If you try to stop me, I'll let you have a taste of your familiar's power. Also, if you don't know what's good for you, I don't mind taking back your 12th familiar. Vatler was clearly not interested in Aurora. His gaze was fixed on Dustless, and the pitch-black mana bursting out of his body was almost solid. It was filled with a soul-stirring power, and its precision, range, and quantity were all greater than Aurora's. Boom, boom, boom. Aurora wasn't someone who would back down easily. Her immature body once again erupted with a burst of ice-cold magic power, and the surrounding temperature dropped by several hundred times. It became incomparably cold and almost instantly engulfed the surrounding forest, turning them all into ice sculptures. Seriously, this guy. Dustless quickly ran to Jijua, Shelley, and the others. He opened his golden Kansusanu to protect them. He knew that this was Aurora's familiar, the Enchantress's deep ice. Its ability was to freeze everything. How did Nagisa become like this? Blue Feather asked worriedly. In her current state, Nagisa was as cold as ice. She was like an ice goddess who didn't want anyone to get close to her. She was the complete opposite of her usual optimistic self. She was completely isolated from the world. That bone-piercing killing intent made Blue Feather feel even more fearful. Aurora probably isn't Vatler's match. Dustless shook his head. Honestly speaking, Dustless wasn't optimistic about her chances. After all, Vatler had devoured 2 primogenitors. There was no doubt that he had mana, and judging from his confident tone, he even had Koju's familiar under his control. Who ambushed me? Right at this time, Dustless suddenly felt a piercing pain at his waist. He grimaced in pain as he turned his head and scolded angrily. If you dare to pinch me next time, your buttocks will bloom. The one who ambushed Dustless without warning was Natsuki Nangong. Taking advantage of Wu Chen's carelessness, her jade hand swept towards the tender flesh of Wu Chen's waist, and unceremoniously made a 360-degree turn. When did the first primogenitor's War King domain get destroyed? What's the meaning of Vatler's breath? Did you do it? Natsuki Nangong's eyes fixed on Dustless. I only killed a few stinky bats. What's there to be surprised about? Also, the most annoying thing is that Vatler, that eyesore, didn't get smashed to death by the meteor and even devoured the first primogenitor and Koju. Why is that damned brat so lucky? Dustless was speechless. He felt that Vatler had stolen Koju's protagonist aura. You destroyed the entire Darkness Empire just like that. You're starting a war. A dangerous character like you is a cancer that will bring disaster to the world. Natsuki Nangong's chest heaved up and down. She was so shocked by the news that her worldview had collapsed. Ever since the primogenitors appeared, they were considered invincible. Now, Dustless had destroyed the War King domain in the blink of an eye. Natsuki Nangong felt dizzy and her brain couldn't handle it. But I saw on TV yesterday that the War King domain was going to sign a peace treaty with other countries. Now that it's destroyed, isn't it too fast? It's impossible to destroy an entire Darkness Empire in a day. Natsuki Nangong said doubtfully. Natsuki, there's nothing to doubt. This is the truth. I was the one who destroyed the War King domain with him. I saw it with my own eyes. A melodious and lazy sound of nature drifted over. Following the source of the sound, what came into view was Shendu Muyi, who was wearing a kimono. You too. Natsuki Nangong fell silent. She found it hard to accept. The people in the War King domain weren't idiots. They wouldn't stretch out their necks for others to slaughter. Moreover, there were at least a few 100 million people in the War King domain. How could they be wiped out in a day? No matter how unbelievable it is, the truth is the truth. Wu Chen held his head indifferently, as if it had nothing to do with him. I used the power of the Dark Oath Book to eliminate all the superpowers and magic of the War King domain. Naturally, the true ancestor was also weakened. Then, Dustless summoned a giant meteorite from space. Summoned a meteor? Natsuki Nangong's eyes widened. She stared at Dustless as though she was looking at a freak. Was this something a human could do? But how did Vatler escape the meteor attack? Immortal Mua Yi could not understand. His heart was full of doubts. That's simple. Dustless had a clear mind. The Dark Oath Book is powerful and can restrict the power of a primogenitor. However, after Vatler devoured the first primogenitor and Koju, his strength has surpassed the primogenitor level. Every item has its own limit, just like how my Dark Oath Book can't restrict it. I reckon that after Vatler devoured Koju and the first primogenitor, he also obtained a power greater than the Dark Oath Book. That's why it's useless against him. It's normal for him to use a power greater than a primogenitor to avoid being locked on by heaven's love. Everything had a limit, and Immortal Mu Ye's Dark Oath Book was no exception. Chapter 1576. Natsuya remained silent. She knew Shendu Muyi well. There was no need for him to lie to her about something like this. It was impossible to hide something like this, and it would probably spread across the world by tomorrow. She stared at the calm Dustless in shock. She was 100% sure that the person who destroyed the Battle Monarch's domain was the doing of this seemingly harmless fellow. Senior, did you really destroy the first true ancestor's Battle Monarch domain? Jijua Shelley raised her voice and stood in front of Dustless with her snow wolf. You! Seeing this, Wu Chen was even more speechless. Looking at the snow cloud wolf, he asked with a headache, "You're not planning to avenge the first true ancestor, are you? If that's the case." Avenge? What a joke. Before Dustless could finish, Hanban Sayaka stepped out and said with hatred, "The so-called vampires are all evil people who ride on the heads of humans. The destruction of the Battle Monarch domain is a blessing from the heavens." Ha 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 ha. La Freya was the most excited. She was so excited that she started dancing. La Freya's country, the Kingdom of Aldija, bordered the Battle Monarch domain. Some conflicts were inevitable, but the Kingdom of Aldija was no match for the Battle Monarch domain. It was inevitable that they would be bullied and threatened. Now that the enemy that had accumulated years of grievances was destroyed, of course they would be happy. After all, the other party was the powerful Empire of Darkness, second to none in terms of strength. They also had a colossal existence like the true ancestor and countless vampires under their command. This wasn't something the Aldisha Kingdom could contend against. Mwah! While Dustless was feeling helpless, La Freya pursed her lips and left a light kiss on his face to show her gratitude. Seems like the true ancestor's Empire of Darkness is hated. He stared at La Freya in bewilderment. He hadn't been in this world for long, so he didn't feel much about the true ancestor. But for other humans, the true ancestor was a nightmare. If it weren't for the Treaty of Sanctum, perhaps the human race would have already ceased to exist. Boom boom boom. Bang bang bang. A fierce shockwave suddenly burst out and Agrora, who had been fighting with Vatler, was sent flying by the boundless mana. He was as weak as a kite with its string cut. Just as I expected. Vatler's strength has increased tremendously after devouring 2 primogenitors. He's even stronger than the average primogenitor. Not only that, he can also use Koju's familiars. He might even be able to use the first primogenitor's familiar. Teskese. No wonder he dared to cause trouble for me. He has enough capital this time. Dustless nodded slightly. The current Vatler barely had the qualifications to be looked at in a new light. 10,000 mammoth heavenly attraction. Dustless stretched out his hand to grab Aurora as he watched her fly away. He joked, "Miss Aurora, with your current ability, it seems that you're far inferior to Vatler." Who? Aurora finally calmed down after falling into Consusanu's protection. She glared at Vatler, who was laughing maniacally, and felt a sense of defeat. Dustless was speaking the truth. Vatler was no longer the same as before. His strength had increased exponentially, and he could control familiars that even Koju couldn't. Hee. Dustless lowered his head and laughed dryly. He revealed a sinister smile. "Aren't you a vampire? Why don't you suck my blood? Who knows, there might be an unexpected surprise." "Are you crazy?" Hearing this, Nangong Natua and the others were stunned. Just how strange was this guy? How could he take the initiative to let others suck his blood? "It's a good idea, but it's useless. I'm only a consciousness now. My blood-sucking instincts have already disappeared." Aurora's eyes dimmed. "That's a pity. Looks like I'll have to deal with this kid myself." Wu Chen showed a disappointed expression when he heard that. Then, his eyes lit up and he said, "Although your current strength is worthy of special treatment, you are just a bat after all." "Is that so?" Vatla glared at Dustless in Consusanu and shouted, "I'll break your shell now. Let's see if your body is as tough as your shell." Pa. As soon as his voice fell, golden lightning swept across the void, and all of them blasted onto Susanu. Boom, boom, boom. A huge roar resounded through the clouds. The unparalleled lightning was extremely powerful, and the surrounding forest was directly razed to the ground, revealing the bare, scorched earth. However, what surprised Vatler was that the golden Consusanu was unharmed. Dustless's location was like a god's domain. Even if he used everything he had, he couldn't break through the golden monster's powerful defense. "Let's see how strong your shell is." Vatler's face twitched. His right arm suddenly turned black, covered with red lines, and boundless mana spread out. After devouring Koju, Vatler had gained control of Koju's familiar. Although it required a spirit medium, it was a piece of cake for Vatler. As long as he could awaken the familiar, it didn't matter whether it was a man or a woman. "Since I'm not your match in a one-on-one battle, all of you come out." Familiars number 3, Dragon Snake Quicksilver, number 5, Lion's Gold, number 9, Twin Horn Scarlet, number 11, Aqua White Steel. Chapter 1577. Vatler roared with all his might. In front of him, 4 ferocious-looking super beasts appeared, each of them exuding a domineering aura that could shake a person's soul. Their eyes were filled with awe and veneration. Boom, boom, boom. The 4 vassal beasts attacked fiercely, and a fierce shockwave hit Susanu head-on. Susanu began to sway, and a kakaka sound could be heard. The effect of a few familiars working together is not bad. Dustless looked around and found that the miniature Consusanu wasn't strong enough to fend off the 4 familiars. Small cracks had already appeared on its surface. He's indeed different from a true ancestor. Is he stronger than a true ancestor? Dustless stared at Vatler curiously. The incomplete Consusanu wasn't even 1/10 as strong as the complete Consusanu, but the fact that Vatler could destroy it showed how strong he was. Humph. This is just the beginning. You underestimated me. Seeing that his attack was finally effective, Vatler shouted in a loud voice, "Familiars number 4, Silver Mist, come out as well." After saying that, more than 5 familiars appeared. It was an extremely powerful lineup. Vatler was surrounded by them. Not only that, Vatler even awakened his original snake-like familiar and brought out all of his assets. Gulp! Jijua, Shelley, and the others choked with sobs. Looking at the dozens of familiars, they felt like their brains weren't enough. Vatler was ridiculously strong. The familiars bared their fangs and looked ferocious, as if they were going to devour their prey. At the same time, the familiars under Vatler's control launched powerful attacks. Each familiar had a different ability. Colorful magic power exploded in the air, filling the air with colorful lights. Boom, 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 boom. Lightning flashed, shaking the sky. The 5th familiar, Lion's Gold, was the first to launch a powerful attack. A large number of lightning bolts fell from the sky. Roar! Not only that, but the rest of the familiars were also working well together, much better than Koju's half-baked familiars. The ninth familiar, Scarlet Feet, leaped into the air and gently tapped its feet on the ground, causing ripples to spread out. Bzzz. Bzzz. The destructive light wave was unrestrained, and finally, it eroded the incomplete Susanoo. The originally weak crack suddenly emitted a ka-ka-ka-ka sound, and the originally negligible crack became bigger and bigger. Boom, boom, boom. At the same time, the fifth familiar, Lion's Gold, also roared towards the sky. Dense and irregular golden lightning bolts pounced towards Susanoo's head and bombarded it with full force. Boom, boom, boom. After receiving consecutive devastating blows, the badly damaged Susanoo was finally unable to resist, and helplessly headed towards collapse. This badly damaged Susanoo was originally a dregs. It belonged to the type with thin skin, and there was a world of difference between it and a high-grade Susanoo released at full strength. This is a good opportunity. Get rid of those people for me. Dragon Snake Mercury. Vatler's eyes flashed. He waved his hand, and a giant bird flew out. It opened its mouth full of fangs and bit at Dustless and the others. This is bad. This guy really knows how to cooperate. Agrora frowned. He didn't expect Vatler to be able to use the power of the fourth primogenitor so well. He was different, and more suitable than Koju to be the fourth primogenitor. You deserve praise. Dustless smiled. He looked at Vatler for a few seconds, then said coldly, but I hate people who overestimate themselves. No one can save you this time. I will kill you. Dustless's scarlet eyes turned at full speed. Black flames danced in his eyes as he locked onto Dragon Snake Mercury. Amaterasu. The black flames were aimed at Dragon Snake Quicksilver. They thought they could burn him alive, but what happened next was unexpected. Amaterasu didn't burn the target as usual. It couldn't burn the familiar at all. It could only watch as Dragon Snake Mercury pounced at it. What's going on? The girls asked in surprise. They weren't normal people, so they could see what was going on. Dragon Snake Mercury's body seemed to have disappeared in an instant. This guy. Dustless frowned and looked at Vatler in surprise. Vatler was a battle maniac, but he was surprisingly smart. This is his fourth familiar, Silver Shell Mist. Its ability is an expanded version of the vampire's ability to turn into mist. Creatures and buildings can be turned into mist within a certain range. Everything will lose their original form and substance. This ability to turn substances into mist is one of the fastest ways to move around. Without a physical body, it also meant that Dustless's attack was useless. It was like hitting the air and would not have any effect. I told you before, don't treat me like an idiot like Koju. That kid may be a true ancestor, but if I want to kill him, it'll be a piece of cake. Vatler said proudly. Ayo, 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 ayo. At the same time, the Dragon Snake's Mercury attacked rapidly. Its big mouth full of fangs opened and emitted a dense cold air. It seemed that it was going to swallow Wu Chen. He's forcing me to make a big fuss. He wanted to take care of Vatler easily, but he didn't expect him to be so skillful with his familiars. Even the miniature Susanoo was destroyed. Let's be serious. Otherwise, Vatler will really think he's invincible. At most, this island will sink. At worst, I'll give them the warlord's domain as compensation. Chapter 1578. Dustless murmured. Hearing him, the faces of Ji Zhua, Shelley, Nangong Na Yu, and the others changed dramatically. They all stared at Dustless with gloomy faces. Don't look at me like you want to eat me alive. This guy is the one who forced me. If I don't show my true face, Vatler will really think that I'm made of mud. Dustless's face was as cold as frost. His chiseled face was filled with coldness. I also want to see if you have 8 heads, or if you have horns on your head. Vatler snorted, unwilling to be outdone. Woo woo woo. At the same time, he waved his hand and summoned several vassal beasts. Due to the size of the vassal beasts, they swayed as they walked, causing the ground to shake. Boom boom boom. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. Once again, thick golden lightning descended from the sky. It was as frightening as the punishment of the heavens. Pa pa pa. Lightning bolts that were powerful enough to flatten a mountain surged around Dustless. His body was constantly being destroyed, severely ravaged by the scorching heat and lightning. However, he stood tall and didn't fall. His calm expression didn't change at all. If one looked carefully, they would be astonished to discover that although Wu Chen's body was continuously destroyed, his wounds would overflow with a warm light that rapidly healed the wounds on his body. When he was attacked by the lightning, he would be healed almost instantly. How is this possible? Vatler's mouth was wide open, his jaw almost dislocated. He stared at Dustless and subconsciously rubbed his eyes, thinking that he was hallucinating. However, after wiping his eyes, he saw an even more unbelievable scene. He said in a daze, "Is this guy immune to my lightning? Since you are immune to my attacks, then why can't I be immune to yours?" Dustless glanced at him and asked calmly, "You think you are special? Do you think you can do something that others can't? Don't be naive. Your current level. I actually reached it a few hundred years ago." Nangong Na Yu and the others all had strange expressions on their faces. A few hundred years ago? Could it be that this guy was already a few hundred years old? Is he an old man? Nangong Natanyu had a strange expression on her face. Dustless was only 17 or 18 years old. Old man? Dustless's mouth twitched and he glared at Nangong Na Yu. "Although you can turn into mist, but..." Dustless suddenly said with a strange smile, "In front of absolute power, all abilities are just a joke." Boom boom boom. Dustless chuckled as he stared at the mist in the sky. "The only reason you can turn into mist is because you're borrowing the power of the fourth familiar, Cloud Shell. The mist it spits out can turn everything into mist. But if the mist disappears, will you still be of any use? Make my fog disappear?" Vatler laughed and mocked loudly. "Are you crazy? Don't say such childish words. You have to understand that the mist created by my familiar has already covered the entire island. Do you think you can make it disappear just because you want to?" "So what?" Dustless asked casually. At the same time he took out a slender tachi and shouted, "Bankai, tragic fire tachi!" Buzz buzz buzz. The unassuming saber immediately emitted a wisp of hot steam. Nothing else changed except that the saber became even more ancient and weathered. "You think you can get rid of my mist with this stupid tachi? Dream on." Vatler curled his lips and was about to laugh when he raised his head. His expression changed drastically. In the void, a large amount of water evaporated inexplicably. The fog that covered the sky was also quickly dispersing. Suddenly, the air became extremely dry. All the water in the sky was evaporating at an accelerated rate. What is going on? Ji Shua and the others were shocked. They were shocked to find that the water in their bodies was evaporating at an accelerated rate. Their sweat was gone with the wind. Not only that, but the surrounding wild animals, flowers, and trees all turned yellow and withered in an instant. The lush green grassland turned yellow and withered. "This guy..." Natsuki stared at Dustless. She could clearly feel that all the water in the sky was evaporating and the mist was dispersing. The essence of the mist is water. If I evaporate all the water in the world, will you still be able to create this mist? The answer is no. If possible, I don't want to use Zanka no Tachi. This Zanka no Tachi is too powerful. The moment I use Bankai, all the water in the world will evaporate. Dustless explained in a soft voice. At the same time, the mist in the sky was dispersing and was being devoured by Zanka no Tachi. That's impossible. Vatler's face turned green. He could feel all the water in the world evaporating. Even the lakes around him turned into dry land. All the water sources were wiped out. Dang! He calmly glanced at the 5 vassal beasts. Their true forms were completely exposed, and he swung his Zanka no Tachi at the terrified vassal beasts. Zanka no Tachi. North. Ashes of heaven and earth. Puchi! The saber aura that seemed as weak as a breeze immediately revealed its ferocious side. When it came into contact with the familiar beast, it didn't release any explosive flames or slash at all. It simply dismembered and devoured the familiar beast, vanishing without a trace in the blink of an eye. One swing and one end. This was the most realistic portrayal of Zanka no Tachi. Chapter 1579. How many unbelievable abilities does this guy have? And what's with that weapon? Could it be the weapon of the gods? Vatler's face turned green as he stared at Zanka no Tachi. He couldn't hide the greed in his eyes. This weapon was too overpowered. Vatler's heart raced as he was tempted by Zanka no Tachi. He was even more excited than when he devoured the primogenitor. From the attack range, scale and power, Zanka no Tachi was far more powerful than the familiars. It was as if the entire world was under the shadow of Zanka no Tachi. Gulp! Vatler's heart was about to jump out of his chest. That super weapon should be mine. Only someone like me can wield it. Vatler stared at the Zanka no Tachi in Dustless's hand with a pained expression as if Dustless had stolen his treasure. Did a donkey kick this guy in the head? Dustless had a strange expression on his face as he sent out another wave of Zanka no Tachi. It was normal to be greedy for Zanka no Tachi. Thinking back to when old man Yamamoto released his Zanpakuto, Dustless was also envious and jealous. All in all, Vatler's performance was within Dustless's expectations. Shoo shoo shoo. The sharp sound of something breaking through the air resounded through the clouds. Raising his head, he saw a super hot storm sweeping over. Everything it came in contact with was turned into ashes. Zanka no Tachi. North. Ashes of heaven and earth. The target of the Zanpakuto was the familiar in the sky. Crimson with 2 horns. It was going to crush the crimson horse like a whale. Roar 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 roar. Needless to say, the 2-horned Shin Fei would definitely not sit and wait for death. He immediately roared towards the sky. His sharp horns lightly pointed towards the void, and a wisp of energy rippled out in the horizon, attempting to stop or even destroy the blade that was attacking him. Poochie! The idea was good, but the reality was too cruel. The ripple of energy that didn't materialize was vaporized by the high temperature of Zanka no Tachi before it could reach the Zanpakuto. Ayo 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 ayo! The 2-horned crimson cried out in fear, asking for help from Vatler. However, Vatler was petrified, also stunned by the ferocious Zanka no Tachi. For a moment, he was frozen in place. Swish! Swish! Seeing that its master was scared silly by the enemy, the double-horned crimson quickly moved its body and waved its 4 limbs, trying to escape the lock of the saber aura. This guy was too scary. Poochie! Compared to the galloping stellar energy, the 2-horned crimson was simply too slow. It was dismembered in the blink of an eye, just like the other familiars. He did not release bursting flames, nor did he release a slash. He only erased everything that came into contact with him. Damn it! Seeing this, Vatler cursed loudly. He hadn't expected Dustless to be so terrifying. He was practically a god of death. Anything that came into contact with him would evaporate into thin air. All of you attack together. Vatler ordered the remaining familiars to attack together. This was his last desperate attempt. Since he couldn't fight him alone, he could only order all his familiars to surround him. Laughable. Dustless shook his head in disdain, a ruthless glint in his eyes. His entire body began to glow like a scorching sun, golden flames burning fiercely. Awoo! The familiars opened their mouths. Just as they were about to swallow Dustless whole, the golden flames on Dustless's skin suddenly grew several times larger. Zanka Flame Tachi. Sunbreaker Prison Robe. The golden flames were dazzling to the extreme. The attacking familiars were instantly obliterated. Several of the familiars that had wanted to attack Dustless were instantly annihilated. The terrifying heat of over 15 million degrees pulverized everything. Zanka Flame Tachi's highest temperature was close to the core of the sun, around 15 million degrees. The familiars were burned alive before they could even get close to Dustless. You're the only one left. Dustless slowly approached Vatler, a dangerous light flickering in his eyes. Damn it! Vatler was drenched in cold sweat. He didn't dare look Dustless in the eye. He was afraid that he would fall to his knees and surrender. I won't kill you. I'll just take your soul and then I'll throw you into the sea to feed the sharks. Before Dustless could finish, Agurola gnashed his teeth and glared at Vatler. He looked like he wanted nothing more than to skin Vatler alive. Idiot, I hope you don't piss off any more women in your next life. He glanced at Vatler with pity. If he wanted to blame someone, he could only blame this guy for devouring Koju and angering Agurola. He was determined to avenge Koju. Go to hell. Zanka Flame Tachi's power was suppressed to the limit. Dustless's body flashed, and under Vatler's shocked gaze, the flame swept towards his head. Poochie! Vatler's head was separated from his body. Dustless had killed him with a single slash. Humph! Letting him die so easily is too easy for this hateful guy. In my opinion, it would be better to throw him into the sea to feed the sea creatures. Agurola coldly snorted. His eyes were red, as if he was still grieving over Koju's death. Then he'll contaminate the fishes, Dustless said half-jokingly. The girls burst into laughter. However, Dustless decided to kill Vattler after careful consideration. This guy had devoured 2 primogenitors. If he did as Agurola said and fed him to the fishes, what if he revived? A primogenitor's regenerative abilities were abnormal. Dustless felt that it was safer to kill Vattler directly. Chapter 1580. Expressionlessly staring at Vattler's body, Dustless finally decided to take the final step, which was to extract his soul. The soul of a true ancestor was undeniably powerful, and there were 2 of them. In addition, Vattler himself was the monster closest to a true ancestor. Devouring them would be beneficial to Dustless. You guys go back first. Leave this place to me and Agrora. Waving his hand, Dustless signaled the others to go back. You too. Gazing at Dustless and Agrora suspiciously, Natsuki sensed something unusual. Her bright eyes swept over Dustless and Agrora, trying to find a flaw. Us too? Do you have any malicious intentions? Agurola's small face looked rather strange when she heard this. She stared at Wu Chen in a puzzled manner. I remember you guys still have school, right? It's almost 1 o'clock now. Be careful not to be late. Dustless reminded Jijua and Shelley out of kindness. Oh no, I'll let you go this time. The girls retreated in fear. For good students like them, being late for class was a serious matter. What do you plan to do? 10 seconds later, all the girls scattered and rushed to the Kai-Hai Academy. Only Nangong Na Yu, Agurola, and Dustless were left. The one who spoke was Natsuki. She continued, Don't tell me you want to. Nangong's eyes, which were as exquisite as spring water, were filled with a strange expression. Seeing Dustless staring at Agurora's pretty face without blinking, she suddenly understood something. She said in disdain, You want to kill Koju's sister as soon as he dies? You'll even get Agrora for free. Buy 1 get 1 free business. Kid, you're quite scheming. Pucci. Hearing this, Dustless spat out a mouthful of blood. The corners of his mouth twitched. Don't think you can slander me as you wish just because you're my boss. I can sue you for slander. You should know the consequences of slandering me. Dustless stared at Natsuki. He was sure that she did it on purpose. I can revive you. Staring at Xiao Nagisa's face, Dustless knew that Agrora was the only one controlling this body. He said confidently, With my eye power, it won't be a problem to use the outer Tao reincarnation heavenly art. Oh. Upon hearing that, Agrora only responded softly and wasn't as excited as imagined. Then, he suddenly realized something urgent and asked, Can we revive the ancient city? Absolutely not. Dustless refused without thinking. Resurrecting Akatsuki Koju? What a joke. That annoying vampire bat was finally dead. Who would resurrect him now? Is that so? Agrora's bright eyes clearly dimmed, without any luster to speak of. It could be seen that Koju's sudden departure was a big blow to her. I'm sure that if Koju's spirit is in heaven, he would want you to live on. Natsuki added, You can't waste his good intentions. That's right. Dustless gave her a thumbs up and sighed inwardly at how good Natsuki was at talking. He then said softly, The first true ancestor soul, Koju's soul, and Vattler's soul have completely fused. The 3 of them have fused into one. That's why Vattler's strength increased explosively. Next, I'll use the same method to fuse the 2 of you. You mean? Agrora was stunned for a moment before asking in astonishment, You're willing to let me devour their souls? Did I hear wrongly? After devouring the souls of 3 powerhouses, anyone's strength will increase by leaps and bounds. You didn't hear wrongly. Looking into Agrora's eyes, Dustless calmly replied, In the end, it's yours. Vattler and the first true ancestor souls are only incidental interest. This guy is quite open-minded. Natsuki felt a trace of admiration for Dustless's attitude. Anyone would feel a desire to possess a true ancestor's soul. Even she couldn't let go of it. Dustless's carefree attitude made Natsuki view him in a new light. In truth, this weak soul had little effect on Dustless. Let's go to Koju's mother's place to retrieve your main body. With that, the three of them left together. Their destination was Koju's mother's house, Koju's laboratory. Koju's sudden death was a great blow to his mother. Koju's mother was exceedingly sad. She even almost fainted. When she learned that Vatler had fused with the first true ancestor in Koju's soul, she knew that it was already too late. Even if she could revive Koju, he wouldn't be the same person as before. Inside the cold and deathly silent laboratory, lying on the experiment table was a pretty girl. She wasn't very old, probably between 12 to 14 years old. She had a head of gorgeous rainbow-colored hair and a pale and powerless face. This was Agrora's original body. Can such an unimaginable thing really be done? Koju's mother looked at Dustless suspiciously. Although she hated Dustless very much. Who told this guy to bully her son? But now that Koju has died, and Dustless killed Vatler, it was equivalent to avenging her son. She had a good impression of Dustless. Unimaginable thing? Reviving a person is just a small matter for me, Dustless said with a light smile, full of confidence. Staring at Agrora on the operating table, Dustless suddenly shouted and activated Rinnegan Sharingan. Outer Path. Rinnegan Technique. Chapter 1581. Everyone's gaze was fixed on Dustless. They did not expect him to have such a heaven-defying ability to bring someone back from the dead. Was this something a human could do? At the very least, none of them believed that anyone could do it. I would like to see if you are really that capable. Nangong Natsuyu placed her hands on her hips. Her expression was extremely proud, as if she was waiting for Dustless to fail so that she could ruthlessly ridicule him. However, she was destined not to have such an opportunity. A layer of azure light covered Agrora's body. It was like a miraculous elixir that completely sunk into Agrora's body. Following that, a miraculous scene gradually occurred. Agrora's pale face gradually regained some color. Her cold body also rapidly warmed up. She could even move her fingers slightly. Can he really do it? Nangong Natsuyu looked at the scene in front of her in a daze. Her jaw almost dropped to the ground. You can't be one of the gods recorded in the Bible, right? Xiaofan stared at Dustless. His sharp eyes tried to see through Dustless's essence. This is just the outer Tao reincarnation of heaven technique. It is one of my countless abilities. There is nothing to be surprised about. Facing the astonished gazes of the others, Dustless was abnormally calm. This world is terrible. Nangong Natsuyu suddenly sighed. The first true ancestor's Battle King domain was destroyed by Dustless. Akatsuki Koking was also devoured. In short, there were too many things that happened. Now, a monstrous character like Dustless had appeared. His strength completely surpassed the so-called true ancestor. She felt that the end of the world had arrived. Ding ding. Agrora, who was on the operating table, unconsciously let out a low groan. Shortly after, under the expectant gazes of the others, she opened her watery eyes that were as pure and flawless as gemstones. Am I really resurrected? Agrora, who opened her eyes, said in disbelief. She subconsciously pinched her skin. The pain made her realize that this was not a dream. She had her own body temperature. Of course. This kind of thing is as easy as pie for me. Dustless smiled and said, I have already fused the souls of Akatsuki Koking, the first true ancestor, and Vatler into your body. I estimate that you will only need a period of time to adapt and you will be able to obtain their full strength. Thank you. Agrora bowed sincerely. It's a small matter. Dustless waved his hand, indicating that he didn't need to care about it. There was no need to thank him for this kind of thing. He only consumed the eye power of the Sharingan, and it didn't have any fatal effect on himself. In that case, Nagisa will be free from now on. Xiaofan was relieved. He had already lost Koju and his future depended on his daughter. It would be best if Agurora could leave Nagisa's body. After chatting for a while, Dustless and the others left Xiaofan's laboratory. Agurora also left with them. She didn't have a place to stay for the time being, so she just so happened to be staying in Koju's house. In any case, Koju was already dead. At Dustless's house, Ji Zhua and Shelley had already finished school and returned home before Dustless. When they saw Dustless and Agrora coming back together, everyone frowned and secretly admired Dustless's luck with women. Perhaps Dustless didn't realize that a large number of beautiful women had already gathered at his house. Although many of them came inexplicably, it was undeniable that everyone was now living under the same roof. La Freya, that guy can't be possessed by the peach blossom god, right? It must be because he is too strong that a lot of people want to hug his thick thigh. Honban Sayaka was speechless. Dustless's unique charm was all attributed to the source of his strength. Since ancient times, beautiful women loved heroes. This sentence was not wrong. Especially people like Dustless who had the strength to destroy the world. They were even more popular. For example, why was Koju so popular in the original work? The fundamental reason was his identity as a true ancestor. If he was an ordinary person, no one would care about him. Shoo, lower your voice. If you are found out, how can I, the first princess, put my face? La Freya glared at Honban Sayaka reproachfully, hinting her not to talk too much. Dustless was sweating profusely after the big battle during the day, and his body reeked of sweat. As soon as he got home, he went to take a bath without even eating dinner. La Freya peeked at Dustless through the gap of the door. Really, you still know that you are a princess? Do you look like a princess now? Honban Sayaka smiled bitterly in bewilderment. As a princess, it's fine if you peeked at someone taking a bath, but you actually took pictures in secret? Where is your moral integrity? But speaking of which, where is Azure Wing? I remember she was still here just now, but she didn't come home either. Honban Sayaka looked around and suddenly found that Azure Wing was missing. She couldn't help but frown. I say. In the bathroom, Dustless frowned as he stared at the woman in front of him. She was tall and slender, and some parts of her body were very well distributed. The parts that should be protruding were very prominent, and the parts that should be perky were very conspicuous. Her golden hair was like the waves of the sea, casually hanging by her waist. Her clear eyes were very direct, and had an indescribable wild beauty. Miss Azure Wing, is it appropriate for you to watch me take a bath like this? Azure Wing put her hands on her hips and stared at Dustless, not caring about her naked body at all. She was very different from the usually shy Azure Wing, and her eyes were very open and natural. In my eyes, it's just skin. Of course, if you think it's unfair or you're at a disadvantage, I can also take off my clothes and we can see each other naked. This tone doesn't sound like Azure Wing, and the way she addressed me. Could it be that strange consciousness that entered Azure Wing's body before? Hearing this strange address, Dustless frowned. He carefully stared at Azure Wing and asked tentatively, "Are you that alchemist Nina Yadalak?" Chapter 1582. Cough 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 cough. Dustless felt awkward as he looked at Azure Feather who was about to take off her clothes. He coughed a few times to stop her as he cursed her for being shameless. After all, it was Nina Yadillard who was in Azure Feather's body and not her own consciousness. Dustless was also not interested in her 2 lumps of flesh. If you think it's unfair for me to watch you bathe, then it's fair for me to take off my clothes for you to see, Nina Yadillard said proudly as she took off her clothes. However, after so many years, there are still people who know my name. Looks like I'm famous now. That's enough. Seeing that this guy was about to show his sincerity, Wuxia hurriedly climbed out of the bathtub. Ignoring his wet body, he directly put on his pajamas and stopped him in a bad mood. You have to be honest. Also, please understand that your body now belongs to Miss Lan Yu. If you want to take it off yourself and not someone else's. That's true. Nina Yadillard was stunned as she scratched her head awkwardly. Thank you for reminding me. Otherwise, I would have forgotten all about it. You. Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he rubbed his nose helplessly. If you have anything to say, just say it. When you turned into a red liquid and entered Azure Feather's body, I noticed it. I didn't do anything to you because I didn't think you had any ill intentions. At the same time, I hope you won't do anything stupid. Otherwise, I will kick you out of her body. Of course. Nina Yadillard felt that Dustless's words were harsh, but she wasn't angry. She knew that Dustless was telling the truth. Back then, she had been hiding in Asakash's body. She had witnessed with her own eyes how Asakash had crushed Vatler. The entire process had been a one-sided slaughter, A one-sided battle filled with malice. I didn't have a choice. Trying to lower her voice, Nina Yadillard said with a headache, "You know that Tenzuka Gong took the sage's spiritual blood. His goal is to revive the sage. Although the sage is not as terrifying as Vatler, he is still a troublesome character." "What do you plan to do?" Dustless asked calmly. "I hope to borrow your strength to defeat him." Seeing that Dustless was not angry, Nina Yadilak relaxed and said, "To tell you the truth, Tenzuka Gong was one of my former apprentices. I know what kind of person he is. That kind of crazy guy can do anything. You don't want him to hurt your friend, do you? If you just want me to kill Tenzuka Gong, I can promise you." Dustless was surprisingly easy to talk to. He snorted coldly and said, "If it wasn't for Vatler's interference and Tenzuka Gong's long legs and fast running speed, I would have crippled that eyesore long ago." "That's for the best." Nina Yadilak's heart calmed down when she heard that. She said apologetically, "I didn't expect to cause so much trouble to my descendants after being dead for so many years. I'm really sorry." "It's not your fault." Dustless waved his hand, indicating that she did not need to be apologetic. He was quite satisfied with Nina Yadilak's attitude. Anyway, he hated and disliked Tenzuka Gong. The next time they met, he could just kill him. It was not a problem. "I heard that Shelley and Cannon are going to participate in the research in a few days. This is the best opportunity. Tenzuka Gong will definitely come when he hears about it." Dustless's words revealed a strong murderous intent. "You?" Nina raised her eyebrows and was speechless. "Are you going to use them as bait? If there is an accident, the consequences will be unimaginable. I advise you to think twice before you act." "Accident?" Dustless curled his lips disapprovingly. Then he chuckled and said, "Life is only beautiful when it is full of surprises. If everything goes as expected, what fun is there?" Time flew. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. At the port, the cruise ship slowly sailed out of the port. Then, it gradually sped up. It gradually lost its texture and turned into a tiny black dot. "Such a crazy plan is really suitable for you." Nangong Natsuki held a black umbrella elegantly. The young man in casual clothes next to her was Dustless. "What are you afraid of?" "I left the warlocks of the Flying Thunder God with them. If Shelley and Cannon are in danger, I can show up at any time to help them." Dustless explained calmly. "You can persuade them to be bait. You're very advanced in deceiving women." Nangong Natsuki nodded like a chick pecking at rice. She seemed to admire Dustless's methods. She even gave him a thumbs up. However, Dustless knew it was derogatory. "Don't worry. That clown will definitely die in the Tiantong tribute this time. That idiot doesn't know what's good for him. He managed to escape 3 or 4 times. That brat is lucky. But where can he run to in the sea?" Dustless sneered. He had already sentenced Tenzuka Gong to death in his mind. Jijua, Shelley, and Cannon were just bait. His goal was to lure Tenzuka Gong, the idiot, to take the bait. There were hundreds of thousands of people on Itagami Island. It would be difficult to find Tenzuka Gong among the sea of people. Therefore, Dustless wanted to use this opportunity to lure Tenzuka Gong. Tenzuka Gong couldn't wait to revive the sage, so he would use this opportunity to ambush Shelley and Cannon. Dustless could also get rid of this hidden rat in one fell swoop. Chapter 1583. His resolute eyes were full of coldness. Wu Chen quietly stared at the cruise ship in the distance. His eyes were full of calmness. To be honest, perhaps because he was overconfident, he was not worried at all. Even if there was an accident, he could still use the outer path, reincarnation technique to revive himself. Maybe that's why he was so confident. No matter what, Dustless was in an invincible position. Speaking of which, our Special Regions police force was attacked a few days ago and we lost something important. Natsuki seemed to have thought of something and reminded, "The submarine was stolen." "Is that so?" Hearing that, Wu Chen just responded faintly. Then, he turned around and left leisurely as if everything had nothing to do with him. However, the moment he turned around, a raging red light flashed in his eyes. "If I'm not wrong, it should be Amatsuka Gong's doing." Wu Chen left while muttering something. Wu Chen's lips curled into a smile as if he had succeeded in his plot. Ha! That damn pervert finally got careless this time. I thought that he would protect those two little girls at all times. Finally I got the chance. Looking at Dustless leaving safely, Amatsuka Gong smiled crazily. He was really unlucky these days. Everything was well prepared. Only with the existence of Wu Chen, Tian Zhonggong did not dare to take half a step into the thunderpool. Who let the disparity in strength make him stop at a glance? Now that Dustless was finally angry with Jijua Shelly and Hane's cannon, Amatsuka Gong was very excited. Buzz buzz buzz. The golden skull in his hand glowed brightly as if urging Amatsuka Gong to hurry up. Don't rush me. I will take a boat and follow them. I hope you will keep your promise then. Amatsuka Gong's face twisted with excitement. He sneaked out of the port and sneaked into the place where he hid the submarine. Will that guy really come? Looking at the white clouds in the sky and the warm sunlight, Hane's cannon closed her eyes and stared at the ocean in the distance. She seemed to be looking for Amatsuka Gong. It should be. Seniors, Dustlesses, predictions are rarely wrong. Jijua Shelly nodded slightly. She was carrying a black bag, which contained the snow cloud wolf. Let's go eat first. Jijua Shelly chuckled. After finding that there was nothing unexpected, she dragged Kanan to have lunch with her. However, the peaceful atmosphere did not last long, as an accident soon occurred. Boom boom boom. The cruise ship suddenly shook violently, followed by a huge explosion. Bang! Jijua Shelly and Hane's cannon were caught off guard. Jijua Shelly was fine, after all, she was a cultivator, but Hane's cannon was different. Her legs immediately turned red and swollen, and she could no longer move. Who did it? Jijua Shelly scanned the surrounding area with her eyes, like tidewater. However, to her disappointment, there was nothing above the sea. Nothing had attacked them. The threat is coming from underwater, Hane's cannon guessed. Aye aye. That white-haired kid suddenly became so smart. What a surprise! An arrogant voice came from the sky, and a man wearing a white shirt and a checkered hat entered their sight. It was Amatsuka Gong, whose face was twisted with malice. It took me a lot of effort to hunt you two little kittens. Compensate me with your lives, and I will forgive your crimes. Amatsuka Gong laughed maniacally. Where did this guy come from? Jijua Shelly looked at the bottom of the ship and saw an army green submarine. She immediately understood what was going on, and her delicate face became colder. You attacked us with a torpedo from a submarine, and you don't care about the lives of others. You are indeed a lunatic. Jijua Shelly said in an unfriendly tone. She had already taken out the snow cloud wolf. Do researchers carry weapons? Sword wizard, you are so careful. Amatsuka Gong looked at the snow cloud wolf and frowned. He was surprised by Jijua Shelly's action. That's because... An indifferent voice resounded in the sky. Amatsuka Gong heard the voice that he didn't want to hear the most. His proud old face suddenly turned green, then blue, then white. It was very interesting. Although it is a scientific research, it is normal for accidents to happen. To deal with a clown like you, I asked her to wear it secretly. Do you understand now? I've been waiting for you. Dow Breaker number 90. Black Coffin. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The black light from the sky was cruel and merciless, and it directly crushed Amatsuka Gong. Although he realized the danger and tried to dodge, he was still inevitably torn into pieces by the number 90 Dow Breaker. Puchi! 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 Tian Zhonggong's body was instantly torn apart, turning into a pile of scrap metal. It was very miserable. It was cut into pieces by the black blade, as miserable as tofu. Idiot, I only let you steal the submarine on purpose. Do you really think you're so smart that you're an unparalleled genius in scheming? By the way, this so-called scientific research, I'm sure you understand now. It's just a trap to lure you into it. You think your plan has succeeded. Tell me, are you a pig? Hearing what Dustless said, Amatsuka Gong was stunned. He stared at Dustless, who was beaming with joy, and couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Cough cough, sorry, there was a power outage at home today. Chapter 1584. This kid has a good body. Lin Fan stared at Amatsuka Gong. It was too hard for this guy to be his enemy. With Dustless's current power level, Amatsuka Gong wouldn't be able to compete with Dustless even if he was 100 years weaker. However, everyone had their own unique way of living. Perhaps Amatsuka Gong's unique ability to recover after being smashed was his unique ability. Just barely. Dustless gave a decent answer. You! Looking at Wu Chen, who was so close to him, Tenzuka Gong's eyes were about to crack. His eyeballs were about to fall out of their sockets. The majestic killing intent that he had accumulated spread out like a tide. So this is all part of your plan? Trying to lure me out? Amatsuka Gong tried his best to suppress the anger in his heart. His face looked like he was constipated. No wonder his right eye kept twitching these days. Dustless had tricked him. That's right. There are so many people on Itagami Island. It's not easy to find someone. Dustless told him the truth. Looking at Amatsuka Gong's pale face, Lin Fan was happy. This fat rat had been hiding for so long, and now he was willing to come out and die. You want to kill me? Not so fast. With a ruthless determination in his eyes, Tenzuka Gong turned his gaze to the others. There was no other way. Dustless, this cheating player, was too terrifying as an enemy. He could only win by attacking others. Unavoidably, his gaze landed on GMO Shelly and Yi Se Xiao in the end. Although GMO Shelly was also very strong, but compared to Dustless. If this guy could be an enemy, he would be too cute. Although GMO Shelly was also a thorny rose, but to Tenzuka Gong, it was no different from spring. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Amatsuka Gong gathered explosive power under his feet and dove towards GMO Shelly. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. His speed was so fast that it was like a gust of wind. One could only see the tail but not the head of the dragon. Die! His hand condensed into a huge metal blade, and his twisted face looked extremely scary. When he was a few meters away from Jijua Shelly, Gong Tenzuka suddenly leaped up and chopped towards Kanase Natsuya with his shiny blade. What a despicable fellow! Jijua Shelly was infuriated. She did not expect Tenzuka Gong to be so despicable. He had purposely attacked her, but his real target was Kanase Cannon, who was so weak. What worried Jijua Shelly the most was that Amatsuka Gong had attacked too quickly, and she did not have the time to help Cannon. Cannon was about to be captured by Amatsuka Gong. Ah! The world is degenerating day by day. If I remember correctly, you're just an artificial life form. Seriously, you're obviously created by humans, but you're playing tricks in front of humans. What a joke! A light voice came. Dustless glanced at him coldly. With a thought, Tenzuka Gong's body suddenly went out of control. Damn it! Tenzuka Gong was furious. Chapter 1585. Gong Tenzuka screamed hysterically, but no one cared about him. Who asked him to be so despicable? He deserved to be burned by Amaterasu. Gong Tenzuka was tossing and turning in the black flames, screaming miserably. Amaterasu will slowly devour. His body separated from his body? Dustless frowned. He noticed that Gong Tenzuka's body had turned into liquid metal. Then, a large amount of liquid was secreted out of his body. His clothes were covered by the black flames. Just like a clone, another Gong Tenzuka was slowly forming. These days. Seeing the situation, Dustless sighed lightly, knowing that he failed again. You're just a weak little insect, but your ability is so novel and refined. You're a weirdo, but there's a world of difference between you and ordinary people. Dustless sounded like he was praising Gong Tenzuka, but his tone was full of sarcasm. Humph. Hearing this, Teng Zhonggong snorted coldly. In his heart, he knew that Wu Chen was mocking him for being useless in disguise. Taking a closer look, Tenzuo Gong was in an incomparably miserable state. Although he had not died, he had been ravaged to the point that he did not look like a human anymore. His face was completely different, and his entire body was filled with the smell of burnt metal. The pungent smell made people frown and feel extremely uncomfortable. I will take revenge on you. Gong Tenzuka swore. At the same time, he waved his hand and countless spikes shot out. He knew that it was useless against Dustless, so he decided to attack Kanase instead. She was the weakest among them. Who else could he bully if not Gong Tenzuka? Shoo shoo shoo. Looking at the incoming light, Kanae's Cannon's eyes flashed with fear. She subconsciously took a few steps back. After all, she was just an ordinary human. Despicable rat. When Wu Chen saw this, he could not help but be filled with murderous intent. Seeing Tenzuka Gong's smug expression, this brat probably really thought that he could not do anything to him and could only helplessly stare at him. His way of thinking was simply too ignorant. Dustless raised his right arm and aimed his palm at Kanae. He activated his gravitational force and grabbed her. 10,000 heavenly attraction. Clang, 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 clang. All of the Amaterasu tribute's attacks landed on the deck of the ship. Kanae's cannon had already landed behind Dustless and escaped the merciless attacks of the Amaterasu tribute. I'll let you enjoy a move that only super experts can experience. TSK. You're lucky. The one who died the worst by his hands was Vatler. Dustless's eyes were as sharp as a knife, full of hostility. He decisively took out a red tachi. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The blade was simple and unadorned, and it was filled with an ancient aura. Before the tachi could erupt with its own deterrent power, an indescribable heat swept through the sky. Bankai Remnant Flame Tachi. Dustless mercilessly unleashed Zanka no Tachi, and a wisp of hot steam immediately emerged from the blade. Then, the moisture in the air instantly disappeared, and the water stains on the sea also began to evaporate at an accelerated rate. Not only that, but everything in the surroundings also began to evaporate into nothingness. What's going on? Amaterasu tribute screamed in horror. He found that his body was gradually shrinking and slowly disappearing. This inexplicable feeling made him break out in cold sweat. He subconsciously looked at Dustless and asked, "Did you do this?" The essence of Zanka no Tachi is 15 million degrees Celsius of spiritual pressure. Do you think you can still survive under 15 million degrees Celsius? Everything will disappear. Damn it! Tenzuka Gong cursed. The moment the heat appeared, his body disappeared without a trace. He was completely vaporized by the horrifying heat. If Dustless did not deliberately avoid the ship, he would also have instantly disappeared into nothingness. Clang, 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 clang. At this moment, a golden skull fell from the sky. It was extremely dazzling, as if it was made of pure gold. You're the culprit, right? Dustless stared at the golden skull and asked calmly. Cough, cough, cough. A strange sound came, and the golden skull suddenly flashed with a gorgeous light. Then, a hazy shadow rushed out of the skull, and the dazzling light made everyone close their eyes. Why do you resist the great me? You're just an imperfect life form, and yet you want to resist the perfect me. This is treason, an unforgivable crime. The golden shadow spoke in human language, full of arrogance and arrogance. You call yourself a perfect life form? Ridiculous. You need the help of others to resurrect, and you dare to say that you're perfect? Sure enough, like master like servant. Amaterasu tribute is a retard, and it's all because of you. Dustless sneered. He knew that the culprit had come to the surface. The sage. Retard. The golden halo twitched a few times and said angrily, You, a lowly life form, can't understand my greatness at all. Even if this planet is destroyed, without food, oxygen and water, I can still survive. So that's why? You think you're a perfect life form? Superior to others? Dustless heard this and laughed involuntarily. If it was so simple and perfect, then he had encountered countless perfect life forms, and he was one of them. Without food, oxygen and water, it was just a trivial matter for him. It's useless to explain my greatness to a lowly life form like you. You will never understand. The sage was too lazy to talk nonsense. His body, which was just a shadow, turned from nothingness to reality, and became a dazzling golden body. If I sell it, it must be worth a lot of money. Looking at that dazzling golden body, Dustless's subconscious words made the sage's head swell. Chapter 1586. Blasphemy, blasphemy, blasphemy. This is blasphemy to the great me. The golden sage was furious. He didn't expect Dustless to be so arrogant and audacious. Looking at Dustless's eyes, the golden sage's hair stood on end. He could read something else from those eyes. If he sold it, it would be worth a lot of money. You damned bastard, I'm going to kill you. The sage opened his mouth full of fangs and roared. A dazzling and destructive beam of light was formed in an instant. You two stay away. Dustless turned his head and glanced at Wuxia and Canon Hanase. That beam of light is useless against me, but you two might still be severely injured. Understood. The two women nodded wisely. Then they turned around and left. They ran to a relatively safe place to hide. Boom, boom, boom. The beam of light expanded to its limit and covered Dustless. His whole body turned silver and shone so brightly that no one dared to look at him directly. Bring it on. Dustless crooked his finger. There was no fear on his face. Instead, there was provocation. He stared at the sage as if he was looking at a street rat. He didn't even try to hide the mockery in his eyes. Dang! The sage was furious. He opened his mouth and released a powerful attack. Swoosh! 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 Thick beams of light fell from the sky towards Dustless, who was on the deck. The size of the beam was so exaggerated that the void shook slightly as if it could collapse at any time. Ha ha ha! The sage's mouth was full of fangs. He laughed as if victory was within his grasp. This beam of light is powerful enough to flatten a mountain. I know you are strong, but if you are hit by it, you will die for sure. Ha ha ha. And you will never dodge it. The sage laughed arrogantly as if he had seen through Dustless's thoughts. However, his laughter, which was similar to the sound of metal colliding, was really unflattering. This gold twinkle is very smart. Dustless stared at Sage in surprise. If he dodged, the beam would hit the entire ship, and all the students, Kana's cannon, and Wuxia would fall into the water. Then let's just blast it away. Dustless raised his fist as he looked up at the blinding light that was charging towards him. Humph. Do you think your fists are made of iron? A sneer came from the sage's throat. Not only was the power of the falling light beam astonishing, but it also carried a scorching attack. If one touched it with their bare hands, their entire arm could be burned off at any time. Just because you can't do it doesn't mean that others can't. Dustless's eyes slightly solidified, staring at the light falling down, whispering softly, "Armament hockey hardening." Boom boom boom. Then, Dustless decisively punched out at the right time. Bang bang bang. The falling light beam was stopped in an instant, all the light was blocked by Dustless's fist, and he himself was motionless, and there was no discomfort on his handsome cheeks. Gulp. Sage was shocked and choked for a moment, looking at the light that was caught by Dustless. He was shocked and said, "Is this guy's fist really made of iron? Go back to where you came from." Glancing coldly at Sage, Dustless's right fist exerted a little force, and the stalemate light instantly collapsed and flew straight towards Sage's head. It's back. Sage's mouth twitched when he saw this. He increased the horsepower of his legs and planned to escape, but it was too late. Dustless used an even more powerful force to fight back the light. Boom 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 boom. Sage's body was swallowed by the light, and immediately burst like a rainstorm, and the ground was full of dark red liquid. You can come out now. At the same time, Dustless suddenly took out a miniature doll, which was Nina Yadalak's original body. She quickly rushed into the liquid and quickly absorbed it. Damn it, I'm perfect, and I can't lose to a flawed human. Sage's golden body was shattered by his own move, but he also had the ability to repair it infinitely. His sharp golden eyes were gloomy, and his body turned red. He was so angry that smoke was coming out of his 7 orifices. Go to hell. Then a blue energy ball popped out, and Dustless said coldly, Wang Su's flash. Boom boom boom. Sage's body, which had just recovered, was destroyed again by Dustless's finger, and the golden light scattered over the blue sea. The person who made you is not bad. On the sea surface, the broken pieces of Sage gathered again, and then under Dustless's gaze, they finally merged into one, and Sage emerged from the water again, safe and sound. Although I can't kill you, but... At this point, Sage's gloomy smile became strange. Similarly, it seems that you can't kill me either. However, if you continue to exhaust me like this, you'll be the unlucky one. I forgot to tell you before, my stamina is also unlimited. The sage proudly narrated and proudly raised his disgusting head. Idiot! Dustless shook his head speechlessly and said sarcastically, When you say this, at least look at the situation under your feet, or I'll be very troubled. Under my feet? Sage was stunned when he heard this, and looked at Dustless in confusion. Then, he lowered his head subconsciously, and his huge eyes suddenly froze, and a very bad feeling swept across his heart. Chapter 1587. What the hell is this? The sage roared in shock, his voice full of fear. He was shocked to find that below him was a black hole similar to the abyss of the universe. He did not know how deep it was, but the sage knew that if he fell in, he would not be able to get out. I must not be swallowed by this thing. As a perfect being, how can I be swallowed so easily? Absolutely not. I cannot tolerate this situation. The sage struggled with all his might as he roared like a madman. His golden eyes revealed a trace of fear that penetrated deep into his soul. As a perfect being, how could he die? Absolutely not. Idiot, when did I say I was going to swallow you? You still have some value. Dustless laughed and said, the reason you can still talk like a lunatic is because of my mercy. Otherwise, with the power of God's might, and my eye power, you would have already drifted to the abyss of the universe. You still want me to thank you for your kindness? Sage asked angrily. At the same time, he felt that the black hole's gravitational force was much weaker, and he could move his body freely. Of course not. Shaking his finger, Dustless said coldly. Even so, you still have to die but in a different way. In any case, it can be considered as me reusing trash. Reusing trash? Sage's golden mouth twitched and he shouted. The trash you are talking about is me? This is blasphemy. Swish. 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 The sage opened his mouth and shot out a powerful ray of light. The silver ray of light went straight for Dustless's face. Boom. 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 The thick light covered Dustless's eyes. In his anger, Sage increased the power of this move to the limit. It was even bigger and looked unavoidable. This kind of trash move again? Out of boredom, Wuxia raised his arm again. Disappear for me. Bang. 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 Dustless slapped down lightly, and the light that was rushing over was sent flying by Dustless. Just like before, it changed its trajectory. Damn you! Sage's eyes widened, and he sadly found that his move was flying toward him again. Boom boom boom. Sage was both angry and helpless. Faced with his own attack, he was helpless as well. His entire body was blown to smithereens, turning into a pool of fresh red blood. You can absorb him now. Dustless glanced at the pocket-sized figure and said casually. This person was Nina Yadillard. The red liquid on the ground was nourishment for her. Thank you. Nina Yadillard glanced at Dustless gratefully before diving into the red liquid like a fish in water. Her originally pocket-sized body also became slightly larger. With this cycle, she would soon be able to return to her normal appearance. No wonder you didn't kill me. Staring at the gradually growing Nina Yadillard, Sage understood Dustless's evil intentions. This guy was not being merciful. He wanted to squeeze this woman dry. Don't even think about it. The sage roared, and a ray of light shot towards Nina Yadillard. Isn't it better to just disappear obediently? Why do you have to resist? Dustless shook his head as he turned into a flash of light and appeared in front of Nina Yadillard. Dow Breaker 88. Flying Dragon strikes the thief. A thicker flash of light shot out. Due to the angle, the two beams of light inevitably intertwined. Tear him apart. Looking at the light in Dustless's hand, Sage roared. The light beam shattered in the end, but why can't the perfect me be better than him? The sage gloomily muttered to himself. One of them had been torn apart, but that miserable person wasn't Dustless. It was the perfect him. Boom boom boom. The body that had been repaired several times exploded again, turning into a pool of dark red liquid. As time passed, Nina Yadillard gradually recovered. On the other hand, Sage shrunk as he was continuously absorbed. The majestic sage sadly became a worm, and Dustless used God's might to devour him. And that was the end of Sage's life. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. How boring! Dustless lazily hugged his head as he looked at the distant city through the transparent window of his apartment. He watched TV to pass the time. Akatsuki Koju is dead, Vatler is dead, and the first primogenitor's War King domain has been swept away. All his enemies have been eliminated by Dustless, so naturally, he was bored. This kind of lazy life is quite comfortable, but as time goes on, it is inevitable that he will get bored. Bang! At that moment, there was a sudden explosion. A gust of cold wind invaded the warm room. Dustless looked at the source of the sound and saw Natsuki Minamiya. What's the result? Dustless asked curiously. They all agreed and are willing to obey your orders. Even the Lion King organization has chosen to submit to you. Natsuki gave Dustless a satisfactory answer. The entire Itagami Island is willing to break away from the Japanese government. Teske, I didn't expect you to be so popular. Those stubborn bastards are willing to follow your orders. They are treating you like a king. Just a day ago, Wu Chen requested for Itagami Island to become independent and cut off all ties with Japan. Wu Chen thought that the Lion King organization would be against it, but who would have thought that they would agree to it? Treating me like a king? Bullshit. They are afraid of being destroyed by me. Dustless sneered. Just as he was about to open his mouth to speak, Nangong Natsuki's sudden words stunned him. Chapter 1588. Let's go on a date, Dustless. Nangong Natsuyu said seriously with narrowed eyes. Date. Dustless pondered over this word for a moment. He was stunned for a few seconds before he caught the faint smile on Natsuki's face. He quickly realized that this was a trap. I refuse. Dustless glanced at Natsuki with a don't try to fool me expression. Why would Natsuki want to go on a date with him? Dustless shook his head. The probability was 0. She was not a love-struck fool. She must be plotting something if she wanted to go on a date with him. Are you not a man? Natsuki was stunned for a moment before she became angry. She had already given him enough face by asking him on a date. She did not expect him to refuse. Am I a man or not? Are you sure you want to prove it? Dustless blinked innocently and asked. He then began to take off his clothes. Bastard. What are you doing? Natsuki was shocked. She quickly turned her back to Dustless. Put your clothes on the boat. Hee hee. Dustless laughed dryly. He shrugged and said helplessly, You ask me if I am a man or not. I will take off my clothes to prove it to you. Natsuki was furious. She angrily stomped her feet. She turned her head and stared at Dustless. Her eyes were filled with tears. Is there something wrong with Natsuki's head? Seeing this scene, Dustless's face was filled with a strange expression. Looking at the sobbing Nangong Natsuyu, he felt as if his worldview had collapsed. Nangong Natsuyu, this strong woman, was crying? This joke was not funny at all. Cough cough cough. Sorry, I was rude just now. I agree to go on a date with you. Wu Chen finally compromised. He glanced at Nangong Natsuyu and frowned. At the same time, he wrinkled his nose. He smelled a scent from Nangong Natsuyu that he had never smelled before. Strange. Why does she have my scent on her? Staring at Nangong Natsuki, Wu Chen's expression became even more strange. He stared at the girl's dark eyes. They were like the abyss of the universe that attracted his attention. Hey, let's go. Hearing that Wu Chen agreed to go on a date, Nangong Natyu's face immediately lit up with joy. She quickly pulled Wu Chen's arm and skipped away. She was completely different from the usual Nangong Natsuyu, who was inflexible and calm. Really? Are you kidding me? I still want to sleep a little longer. Yawning tiredly, Wu Chen could only change his clothes and go out to play with her. I don't know what's wrong with me today. Inside the elevator, Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he stared at Nangong Natsuyu. She was like a completely different person. Her personality was the opposite of her usual self. She gave off the feeling of a moody witch. Miss Natsuki, where do you want to go? Looking at the scorching sun on the street, Dustless was dispirited. He wanted to take an afternoon nap under the scorching sun, not to mention going shopping with Natsuki. Let's just walk around. Grabbing Dustless's arm, the girl skipped away. She was extremely happy. But before she could take 2 steps, she was blocked by some ignorant people. Hey, gigolo, let go of my hand. Let me do it. A few figures suddenly appeared from a nearby alley. They reeked of alcohol and made people want to vomit. They had bracelets that represented the demon race. Their strength was definitely not ordinary. If you get out of my way, I can pretend that nothing happened. Dustless expressionlessly glanced at them. He was not interested in these small fries. But Natsuki's stubborn temper flared up. Get down here and kowtow to admit your mistake. Natsuki's face darkened as she coldly warned. Even her eyes were filled with a red light. Otherwise, you will regret it. When did this girl become so arrogant? Dustless stared at Natsuki in astonishment. He chose to remain silent and watch the show. Little girl, are you looking for death? You look quite pretty. Apologize to me and I will let bygones be bygones. The hooligan who suddenly appeared stared at Natsuki's delicate face. His hand was already reaching out to grab her. You're looking for death. Natsuki lifted her small foot and swept it out. The hooligan was sent flying. The force behind the kick was extremely ferocious. Ka-ka-ka sounds could be heard. His bones were definitely broken. You broke his bones with a kick? That brat is a demon race. His physique is stronger than normal humans. Natsuki is not a melee fighter. But... Dustless was stunned. Bastard, you dare to hit our boss? Everyone, let's teach him a lesson. Several hoodlums were furious. They took out steel pipes, iron rods, and other things and rushed over. They all smashed towards Nangong Na Yu. You guys can kill each other. Natsuki coldly said. She blinked her eyes and the hooligans started to beat each other. Let's go, Chen-kun. Natsuki pulled Dustless's hand to leave, but she found that she couldn't pull him away. She turned her head and looked at him in confusion. Dustless was as cold as ice. Mississippi. Although I don't know what happened, you are not Natsuki. The taijutsu you used to break that hooligan's bones was armament hockey. Secondly, it should be genjutsu that controlled them to fight each other. Although I don't know how you did it, I clearly felt the fluctuation of chakra. Please give me a reasonable explanation. Dustless coldly stared at Natsuki. No wonder this girl felt strange. She was completely different from the usual Natsuki. It turned out that she was an imposter. Ah! Sure enough, I was seen through. Natsuki shrugged helplessly. Her tone was somewhat mocking. This girl. Wu Chen's mouth twitched. He glared at Nangong Na Yu. Her tone was the same as his, tangled. Chapter 1589. The young girl's eyes were filled with ridicule, and a trace of teasing flowed within them. Her cute and exquisite face was suffused with 2 faint blushes, and she was extremely beautiful. In this world, chakra and armament hockey are exclusive to me, and no one has any reason to learn them, so why do you know how to use them? Speaking of this, Dustless paused and said, So please tell me your identity and origin, otherwise, it will be difficult for you to escape from my hands. Phew. As his voice fell, Dustless grabbed the girl's white arm. Let me go. The girl's face was stiff, and her angry look was quite cute and charming. Crystal tears squeezed out of her eyes again, and she looked like she was about to cry. Humph. But this time it obviously didn't work. Dustless just snorted and chose to turn a blind eye. His face was firm, and he wasn't confused by her at all. At the same time, Dustless began to think about the origin of the girl. Koju, that guy seems to have a similar experience as me. Dustless suddenly thought of Koju. Koju's daughter, Koju, also tricked him like this. Could it be? As if he understood something, Dustless's face twitched fiercely, and his calm eyes rolled up stormy waves, and he stared at the girl's eyes in disbelief. This kind of thing can be followed. Koju's daughter ran from the future to the present. If this is the case, it can also perfectly explain the origin of the girl's chakra and armament hockey. After all, Dustless is the only one on this planet who knows armament hockey and chakra, so the identity of the girl is actually on the verge of being revealed. You finally understand. The girl showed an unhappy expression. She seemed to be very dissatisfied that Dustless guessed her identity. Cuff. I'm sorry. Dustless blushed and he let go of the girl's hand and asked awkwardly, What's your name? My name is Natsuki. The girl who looked exactly like Natsuki replied. Good name. Dustless nodded slightly upon hearing this. His previous gloomy mood was swept away. He stared at the girl's crystalline pupils and after hesitating for a while, he asked expectantly, Your father? Is it me? When he said this, Dustless looked depressed. After all, he hadn't made any progress with Natsuki Nangong, and they hadn't reached the point of having a child yet. However, Dustless had no choice but to think in that direction due to the strange girl in front of him. Take a guess. The girl named Moonless revealed a sly smile. Let me guess. Dustless rolled his eyes and said angrily, although I don't know how you did it, but I am the only person on this planet who has chakra, and armament hockey is also the same. The answer is obvious, and you and Natsuki look exactly the same. Dustless's face twitched as he sighed inwardly at the impermanence of the world. Tell me, why are you looking for me? My future daughter. Dustless put on a different face, which was completely different from the shameless expression just now. Ha! Daughter? The girl blinked her eyes and said sarcastically, then I want to ask this father, a father who takes off his clothes in front of his daughter and asks his daughter to verify whether he is a man or not, this kind of guy should go to hell. Dustless opened his mouth and found that he was speechless, and his face was red with shame. Knowing that the girl was indirectly insulting him, he quickly waved his hand to cover up. You don't know, you have to understand that the father didn't do it on purpose, you have to understand him. I'll let you go this time. The girl with delicate appearance put her hands on her hips, and then looked directly at Dustless's eyes, thinking, it's really disappointing, it's a bit different from what I imagined. Then what did you imagine me to be like? Dustless calmly asked, and at the same time, his brows were slightly wrinkled, and his eyes were looking at the distant sky, and there was a flash of anger in his eyes. He could feel an evil aura of disaster coming at him at high speed. At least I won't be a strange uncle who takes off his clothes in front of his daughter. The girl's face was very serious. Poochie! Dustless vomited blood and glared at her. It seemed that this girl still couldn't get over this and was still thinking about such a trivial matter. But, to be honest, I'm also very surprised. Staring at the girl's delicate face, Dustless shook his head lightly. Her height and appearance were almost the same as Natsuki Nangong, so it was no wonder that he recognized her wrongly. In fact, if she didn't use chakra, Dustless would still think that this girl was Natsuki Nangong. Roar, 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 roar. At this moment, in the depths of the blue void, a hysterical roar suddenly sounded. Looking up, it was a ferocious-looking evil dragon. Of course, it could also turn into a flying lizard. Is that why you're here? Pointing at the evil dragon in the depths of the void, Dustless stroked his chin and said proudly, since you can inherit my chakra, you can't be weak. You shouldn't be so weak that you can't even deal with a dragon. Dustless only glanced at the evil dragon, and then ignored it. There was nothing special about it, and there was nothing worthy of his attention. Of course there are other things. The girl's face turned serious. You too. At this moment, an untimely voice suddenly sounded. Dustless turned his head and saw a girl dressed in gothic lowly clothing. Although she was young, her aura was very strong, and there was an inexplicable majesty about her. Yo, Natsuki! Dustless waved his hand in greeting. He knew that this was the real Natsuki Nangong, and the girl just now was just an imposter. Or rather, she was the daughter of Dustless and Natsuki Nangong, although her arrival was a bit strange. Chapter 1590. Nangong Natua looked at herself, who looked exactly the same as her. Her expression was one of shock. Her delicate little face was filled with astonishment. She was also extremely shocked by the young lady in front of her. You are. However, in some aspects, Natsuki was much more flexible than Dustless. She stared at the girl, and after a while, a wisp of wisdom flashed in her eyes. She seemed to have seen through the girl's identity, and then she fell silent. Cough, cough, cough. Seeing the three of them fall silent, Dustless had no choice but to stand up and cough twice. There was nothing he could do about it. It was inevitable that men would suffer losses sometimes. Roar, 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 roar. Deep in the sky, a ferocious-looking dragon descended from the sky. Its appearance was quite ferocious, and its eyes were filled with killing intent. There was even saliva dripping from its mouth. Even if you overestimate yourself, you should know when to stop. The young girl coldly raised her right hand. Her pale palm contained a trace of destructive power. At the same time, her black eyes that were as deep as onyx also showed a drastic change. A pair of mysterious blue and white eyes appeared in the girl's eyes. This is Seeing this, Dustless's eyes flashed with surprise, and he muttered to himself, "How surprising, it seems that she inherited the Tensigan from me." Boom boom boom. The turbulent repulsive force erupted at full speed, and the explosive impact hit the dragon that was fluttering its wings in the void. Roar 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 roar. Under the violent impact, the dragon howled in extreme pain and was blasted back dozens of meters. There was a clear dent in its abdomen, and scarlet blood flowed out of its mouth. This attack forced the dragon to retreat again and again. "How is the future me? Don't tell me I'm dead," Dustless asked expectantly. After all, Akatsuki Koju's daughter, Akatsuki Koju, came from the future, and at that time, Akatsuki Koju also died because of the Saint Annihilation. "Future? You just destroyed this planet." The girl flicked her beautiful black hair and gave an answer that made Natsuki speechless. "As expected, it was a mistake to let you live." Natsuki glared at Dustless. There was a hint of blame between her brows, and she was also quite conflicted. She looked at the girl who looked exactly like her with a strange expression. Natsuki felt the connection between their bloodlines, and the technique she used was Dustless's. It was obvious what it meant. Thinking of this, Natsuki's face was filled with embarrassment and a rare shyness. "Destroying a planet," Dustless pondered. Natsuki's words, but in his eyes, it was normal. After all, this wasn't the only planet that he destroyed. Roar 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 roar. Of Natsuki Natsuki, Natsuki Natsuki, Natsuki Natsuki, Natsuki Natsuki, and Natsuki Natsuki. Moreover, it opened its mouth and spat out thick flames at Wu Chen and the others. Boom 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 boom. Natsuki Natsuki Natsuki, of Natsuki 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 and Natsuki 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 Natsuki. Really? Dustless sighed in the midst of the flames. The golden light was especially dazzling under the cover of the flames. It was golden and resplendent, emitting a holy and warm light. "Ken Susanu?" The girl said the name of the technique. She was very familiar with it. "Disappear." Dustless raised his head to look at the sky and indifferently glanced at the black evil dragon. Then, his eye energy spun rapidly. A strand of black flame instantly consumed the black evil dragon. Tensho! The giant dragon's huge fat body was instantly annihilated by the flames. It was pulled into the boundless sea of fire, and the black netherworld fire swallowed it up along with its bones. Ayo ayo ayo! The evil dragon screamed in pain until it finally choked and disappeared. "As expected of my dad." Seeing this, the girl gave Dustless a thumbs up. Her face was full of praise and a smile as if she was saying, "I'm not as good as you." This little girl can't be an imposter, right? Dustless was speechless. He subconsciously looked at Nangong Natsuki. She also had an expression that said, "This has nothing to do with me." However, this girl who looked exactly like Nangong Natsuki had a normal expression. "I have something to tell you." At this moment, the girl suddenly moved closer to Dustless and said, "If you want to leave this world in the future, remember to bring everyone with you." "Everyone?" Hearing this, Dustless was stunned. He blurted out, "Are you talking about Azure Wing and the others?" "Who else do you think I'm talking about? You don't seem to know anyone else in this world, right?" The girl rolled her eyes and asked, "This planet will be destroyed in the future. I'm sure you know what this means." Dustless nodded slightly. If the planet was destroyed, it meant that all living things would wither away. Every blade of grass and tree on this planet would vanish completely. That's a must. He nodded resolutely. It would be fine if this planet was safe and sound. If it was destroyed, then he could only bring them away. As for the reason, Dustless didn't ask. There was no decisive future. Everything was changed by human factors. "Aren't you curious about how this planet will be destroyed?" The girl was somewhat depressed. Dustless's reaction to such shocking news was actually mediocre. He was even indifferent. She was quite disappointed. "Who knows?" Dustless shrugged and said, "The future is also unreliable. In fact, the moment you appeared, the future changed. That so-called reason will also change." In the original work, Koju's daughter, Koju, used this method to change the ending of Koju's death. Thus, it didn't matter what the future was like. It would change anyway. My journey in this world is about to come to an end. Looking up at the sky, Dustless's lazy eyes were filled with expectation. Chapter 1591. Inside the system world. The sky was clear and cloudless. White clouds floated lazily in the sky. The green mountains and clear waters were the only real world in this world. The black-haired young man sighed under the shade of a tree. A woman's thoughts can't be easily guessed. Really, compared to Itagami Island, the system world was more comprehensive. The scenery was more beautiful and the climate was more suitable for human habitation. At first, Wuchen thought that if he brought Nangong Na Yu and the others away, they would fiercely object. Wu Chen had even prepared an illusion. However, the world was unpredictable. When the girls heard that they were going to play in another world, they agreed without hesitation. Before leaving, Dustless once again destroyed the world of bloodthirsty frenzy. You are really greedy. Ling Er, the incarnation of the system consciousness, frowned. When he left, Dustless used one of the strongest illusions, the infinite Tsukuyami, to kill the whole world and use the descent of the divine tree world to absorb everyone's vitality. Every time he left, Wu Chen would do this to enhance his strength. Although the means were a bit evil, Wu Chen, who was used to doing bad things, also kept calm. So what? This is a world where the strong prey on the weak. Being weak is a sin. Dustless smiled perfunctorily and said, everything ends here. Now we can change to the next world. This is good too. I can use infinite Tsukuyami and divine tree world descent to absorb the world. My strength will increase too. I hope I can go to a world with a high level of power. Dustless prayed. Ling Er couldn't control this kind of thing. In fact, it was randomly chosen. Where to go depended entirely on Dustless's personal luck. Kacha! Ling Er's seemingly weak arm gently tore apart the void, and a shocking black hole appeared. No, it was more accurate to say that it was a spatial tunnel. How violent! Wu Chen shook his head and glanced at her calmly. Then he plunged into the cave. In a strange world, the weather was clear and very hot. However, Wu Chen's first impression was that it was very cold. He subconsciously opened his eyes and saw the world in the water. F***CK. Why is she so good at picking a place? Next time, she might as well put me in lava. Wu Chen opened his mouth and scolded loudly. Suddenly, a large amount of lake water invaded his lungs. He tried to mobilize his strength, but he helplessly discovered that perhaps because he had just crossed over, his body was soft and had no strength at all. Splash! At the same time, a huge wave came from the lake. Dustless looked for the source. An unexpected figure appeared in front of him. She had aqua blue hair and aqua blue eyes. Even her eyebrows were aqua blue. Her fair face was as delicate as mutton fat jade. Her bright eyes were full of vigor as she pounced on Wu Chen. Her figure was exceptionally hot. She was wearing a pure white tight-fitting uniform. Her curvaceous figure was particularly eye-catching. This girl is so familiar, Dustless whispered to himself. He secretly searched for the joy of the person. Suddenly, he thought of an almost identical figure. His body suddenly felt cold. Is death? Bad luck. Why did I meet this evil star? First, I fell into the water. Now, I inexplicably became the prey of this woman. Dustless felt cold. He had goosebumps all over his body. Isdeth was a famous sadist. Her greatest interest was to torture others. Although Dustless had no grudges with her, this girl came to save him inexplicably. It showed that there was an unknown relationship. In short, Dustless was in the sight of Isdeth. Don't run. There was a faint voice from the bottom of the water. Dustless looked up. It turned out to be Isdeth, who was close at hand. This girl was strong and good at swimming. She caught Dustless almost instantly. She held him in her arms and then rushed to the surface of the water. Although I don't know what happened, I can be sure that she is looking for me for absolutely no good thing. Dustless's expression was full of depression. Just at that moment, he keenly caught the coldness in Isdeth's eyes. Plop! In an instant, Isdeth took Dustless out of the water, jumped to the shore very vigorously, and threw Dustless on the ground. She pointed at Dustless and said, "You want to die before I torture you? Dream on. I still have countless kinds of torture to try. This time, I will try it on your body. Ha! Hearing this, Dustless was suddenly dumbfounded and asked with a speechless face. That? Although I am very grateful to you for saving me, did you get the wrong person? Miss, I don't know you. Dustless was confused by this sudden change. He just crossed into this world and did not offend his death. It was too sad to be a scapegoat for no reason. By the way, there seemed to be a body under the sea just now. That guy looked a little like me. Did his death make a mistake? Dustless bowed his head and thought carefully about the development of the matter. Soon, he found a big problem. He stared at his death speechlessly. It was estimated that this girl had mistaken him for someone else. I saw a person who looked 70% like me at the bottom of the sea. The guy you said may be dead. If you don't believe me, you can have a look. Chapter 1592. However, these words had no effect. Isdeth just stared at Dustless coldly. Her cold pupils did not change at all. She just stared at him quietly. More and more coldness and killing intent flowed from her body. 3 beasts. After a moment of silence, Isdeth called the names of the 3 subordinates. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. 3 black shadows appeared behind her in an instant. They were wearing the same clothes, and they all knelt on one knee very respectfully. They looked at Isdeth with a look of worship and fanaticism. It was as if they saw God. This guy said that he was not the prince. Torture him well, let him admit it, and then let him die in pain. How dare he say that I mistook him for someone else? Isdeth turned her head and left. She sat on the chair prepared in advance and watched quietly. It seemed that Dustless was not qualified for her to do anything. Prince! Dustless heard the words and his eyes flashed with surprise. After a few seconds of contemplation, he was enlightened. He secretly guessed, I'm afraid that Isdeth thought I was the bullshit prince. Unfortunately, that guy is dead. Dustless could be 100% sure that the body in the deepest part of the river was the prince's. He was not the prince, but his appearance was somewhat similar. He was afraid that Isdeth had mistaken him for someone else. Ah! Your Royal Highness, I'm sorry. This is the order of the minister. Who asked you to do the right thing? As a result, the minister was forced to ask Isdeth for help and asked us to kill you secretly. You have to understand that we are still fighting with the alien race. For you, Isdeth secretly came back. Your Royal Highness really deserves to die. The blonde kid squatted and looked at Dustless. His face was full of ridicule and murderous intent. This guy seems to be called Nyo. Glancing at him faintly, Dustless's mind waned. After a while, his strength had recovered 80 to 90%. Now his whole body was full of strength. Isdeth. This guy doesn't seem to be the prince. The silver-haired middle-aged man bowed and respectfully said to Isdeth, they wear different clothes and are different in age. I have seen the prince before, and this guy should be 2 different people. We can barely be considered acquaintances. Dustless glanced at the middle-aged man in surprise. He was also quite familiar with him. This man was called Leva, who used to be Bulet's former boss, the former general of the empire who was both wise and brave. He was framed and arrested because he refused to bribe. Later, he was rescued by Isdeth and had been loyal to her ever since. Is that so? Hearing this, Isdeth nodded slightly and looked at Dustless quietly. She asked, did you see other people's bodies under the riverbed? Tell me the exact location, and I'll let you go if you're right. Let me go? Dustless frowned. Isdeth seemed to be too proud. Obviously, she caught the wrong person, but she didn't apologize. Now she said that she would let him go. She was too arrogant. I'm sorry. Dustless turned his head and did not look at Isdeth. He said loudly, I am forgetful. You are threatening me again. I suddenly forgot the place where the guy died. The tone of this guy's words. The 3 beasts heard the words and their mouths were twitching wildly. They stared at Dustless with horrified eyes. Their big eyes seemed to be about to fall out, which gave people a very shocking feeling. The dull eyes were obviously saying, if you want to die, just say it. There is no need to be tortured to death by Isdeth. You guy. Not only the 3 beasts were stunned, but Isdeth was also full of astonishment. Her eyes were dull and empty gray, and lost the shrewd brilliance of the past. Interesting. Isteth, who came back to her senses, had a strange light in her beautiful eyes. She looked at Dustless curiously and asked calmly, "Are you forgetful? Do you need me to help you think?" "Really?" Dustless was surprised when he heard the words. He quickly opened his mouth and pointed to the depths of his throat and said, "If it's possible, thank you very much. I just drank a big mouthful of seawater. Now, please help me suck it all out with artificial respiration. After that, I will take you to find the body of the prince." Ha 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 ha. After Dustless said this, there was a sound of gnashing teeth. Looking at the source of the sound, what came into view was a ferocious-looking brat Nyo. "What did you say? I didn't hear it clearly. Say it again if you have the guts." Nyo was full of anger, and his eyes were fixed on Dustless. His sharp eyes seemed to be looking for a suitable place to cut open Dustless's stomach. Catching the raging coldness in the depths of Nyo's eyes, Dustless sneered and shouted, "Are you an idiot? I will let that woman give me artificial respiration and suck the water out of my stomach. If you understand, get out of my way, you little retard. You are looking for death." The golden-haired brat was so irritated that he almost vomited blood. At that moment, he attacked with his immature fist. This weak fist seemed to be extremely fragile, but it was definitely enough to easily smash human bones. For the three beasts trio, Isteth was a godlike existence. She was even bigger than the emperor of this country. Now Dustless actually let their idol do artificial respiration. How could they tolerate it? "You don't know how to live." His eyelids twitched slightly, and a surge of energy broke out of his body. The irresistible repulsive force suddenly repelled him. Shinra Tensei! Bang bang bang! The brat who was caught off guard was immediately sent flying, rolling and crawling more than 10 meters away. Only then did he lie on the ground awkwardly. His head was close to the ground, and his buttocks were high up. It was extremely funny. Chapter 1593. Nu! Leva and Didos stared at Nu, who was embarrassed. Their eyes widened in disbelief. Their expressions were extremely exaggerated as they locked on Dustless, who was standing still. Their heads were a little dizzy. "Pah! It hurts." Didos slapped himself. The burning pain made him understand that this was not a dream. "This is... How did he do it? Taigu?" Isthetha's watery eyes also flashed with a strong surprise. The moment just now happened too fast. Everything was just a flash of lightning. She had no extra time to react. When she realized it, Nu had already been blown away. "I can be sure now that you are not the prince." Isteth sat elegantly on the chair and crossed her legs very lazily. "The prince that the minister told me is just an ordinary political enemy. He has no strength and is just an ordinary human. Although Nu's strength is ordinary, she can definitely beat an ordinary human, so you should not be the prince." "Is it?" Dustless heard the words and wiped the sweat stains, then patted off the dust on his body. There was a hot temperature in his body. After the wet clothes were dried, he whispered, "Since this is the case, then it is a misunderstanding. Goodbye." "Wait!" The elegant voice came again. Dustless turned his head to look. It was Isteth, who was smiling. "Anything else?" Wuxia asked. He felt a cold and gloomy aura locking onto him, as if he was being stared at by a hungry beast. The high-density evil spirit could even make people have the illusion that they were drowning in a sea of blood. However, Dustless maintained shock from start to finish and was not affected. "This guy can ignore my murderous spirit?" There were ripples in the calm eyes. Isthetha's bored expression gradually became interested. "But you hit my subordinates, don't you think you should apologize?" "Apologize? You want me to apologize?" Dustless heard the words and sneered. "I can tell you, not to mention your subordinates, even if I hit you, do you want me to apologize? Don't even think about it." Reckless fool. Leva and Didos looked at each other angrily. They looked at each other and attacked from different directions. They were all strong people who followed Isteth to fight. Although they were not strong enough to fight 100 people, at least 1 against 10 was absolutely no problem. "You bugs!" Silver frowned slightly, and some hostility flashed through his eyes. He revealed his scarlet 3-tomo Sharingan, and then glanced at the 2 people attacking him with his deep Sharingan. Plop! The 2 of them were severely injured in an instant. They fell to the ground with pale faces. Wu Chen didn't even move his hands. Isdeth was surprised when she saw this, and she immediately asked, Leva, Dice. You two are getting more and more useless. There's no need to scold the two of them. That's because you'll end up the same way if you run into me. In fact, I don't even need to do anything. I can easily deal with you. The Scarlet Three Tomo Sharingan stared at Isdeth. Dustless said calmly. So, please don't humiliate yourself. Madam Isdeth. At this time, Leva's voice sounded with difficulty. He stared at Dustless's eyes with fear and said in horror, This guy is not an ordinary human being. His eyes are very strange. It seems to be something like illusion and illusion, but it's very real. Is his consciousness still awake? Staring at Leva with surprise, Dustless was quite surprised. He immediately looked at his right hand that was already bloody and nodded. This guy is very decisive. He uses pain to get rid of the illusion. He has rich fighting experience. Are you also a person with Taigu ability? Looking at Dustless's eyes, Isdeth was confused. She did not remember that there was such a Taigu as eyes. The 48 Taigu of the Empire had accurate records. This ability had never been heard of. Taigu? I don't need that ability. It's superfluous for me. Dustless shook his head. Then he turned and left regardless of Isdeth's idea. What kind of place is this? Dustless looked around and found that there were mountains around. There was no one. It was estimated that it was a very remote place. He could not help but curse in his mind. Why do I encounter this annoying trifling thing every time I travel? Wu Chen smiled bitterly. He didn't have the slightest connection with that deceitful prince, and they didn't have any relationship. It was just that their appearances were somewhat similar. Whoosh! At this time, it suddenly snowed in the sunny day. The sunlight could be reflected under the sunshine. Looking carefully, a large number of ice dregs were swept up in the sky, followed by the cold wind as expected. You! The footsteps stopped. Dustless looked at the empty space in front of him. Even if she did not turn her head to look deliberately, she knew that Isdeth was coming. It seemed that she did not intend to let Dustless leave. I am very curious about your ability. Stay and be my subordinate. No matter what your identity is, I can let you get glory and wealth, gold and treasures. There are only things you can't think of, but nothing you can't get. Isdeth raised her voice and tempted. In this era where people's lives were as cheap as grass, it was lucky to be able to have a full meal. She believed that Dustless would give up the darkness for the light. Be your subordinate? It sounds good. Turning his head and looking at Isdeth, Dustless joked. If you can send me to the position of the Emperor, I can barely be your subordinate. You are looking for death. Isdeth was as cold as frost. The murderous intent that had been accumulated for a long time burst out, freezing the flowers and trees around. A layer of ice on the ground suddenly attacked Dustless, trying to turn him into a crystal ice sculpture. I may be your natural enemy. You are good at using ice, and I am good at playing with fire. Fate is really cruel. Chapter 1594. Isdeth was surprised and stared at Dustless. She did not expect him to say that. She said bluntly, although I don't know what you are talking about, but you are right, fire can extinguish water, but the same water can also extinguish fire, and I still feel that I am better than a little kid. Phew! When the voice fell, a blue streamer came to his face. He could vaguely catch the long blue hair. There was no doubt that this person was Isdeth. Isdeth is really a battle maniac. Witnessing Isdeth's eyes when she saw the prey, her face was as excited as if she was injected with chicken blood. It gave people the feeling that she found a suitable toy. But your name is really annoying. When it comes to age, I am qualified to be your ancestor. Because of the reason of being a Jubi, Dustless got eternal youth, as well as an immortal life. He would never be old, so his age had always been about 17 or 18 years old. Let me show you something. Katan. He had not used these ordinary ninjutsu for many years. Although Dustless's technique was also a lot rusty, when Isdeth was about to rush, he still threw out a dragon head with a strong momentum. Great Fire Dragon technique, the dragon head, which was completely composed of flames, roared out and went straight to Isdeth. This kind of trick is useless. The gem-like gorgeous eyes flashed with admiration, and immediately Esteth snapped her fingers. A huge ice wall condensed in front of her, protecting Esteth like a shield. Bang bang bang. Although the fire dragon condensed by flames penetrated the ice layer, this large piece of ice was 1 meter thick, and it did not completely penetrate. It was still a few centimeters thick from Estetha's body. This guy's ability to play with ice is good. If I can give Akiji's ice fruit to her, Estetha's strength will inevitably be better, but unfortunately, Taigu is always a Taigu. Dustless shook his head. Although Taigu was good, its power was limited. It was not as comprehensive as the devil fruit, and the density of the ice made by Akiji was higher than that of Esteth, and the hardness was higher. Ka-ka-ka. Esteth waved her sword and smashed the ice in front of her. Then she turned into a storm and the cold light swept towards Dustless's head. Your speed is very fast. For a human like you to be able to do this is already a miracle. Dustless nodded slightly, glanced at the incoming blade and ignored it with a smile. He simply stood still and deliberately showed a flaw to Esteth. Humph, are you looking down on me? Estetha's delicate face became colder when she saw this, and the strength of her sword increased by 3 points. Originally, she planned to catch Dustless alive and teach this arrogant boy a good lesson. She did not expect that Dustless was not sensible enough, and now he even dared to push his luck. Poochie! The ice sword cut through Dustless's head and cut it into pieces. Why isn't it bleeding? She looked at Dustless with surprise, but what made Esteth depressed was that Dustless did not move and was not injured. She stared straight at Dustless's wound. The place that should be bloody just had a faint golden light. Then it was perfectly repaired. Dustless had nothing to do with it. You can't even hit my body. Do you understand now who is the natural enemy of whom? When the voice fell, Dustless rose into the air, the flash between his legs was diffused, the golden light covered it, and he immediately aimed at Estetha's cheek and kicked. Light speed kick. Estetha's pupils shrank, and she quickly blocked with her arms in front of her. At the same time, she gently waved her hand, and the transparent ice shield appeared again in front of her, like a wall in front of Esteth. Kakaka. However, with a crisp sound, the shield condensed by Esteth collapsed in an instant, and the huge flash was all greeted by Esteth. Boom boom boom. The flash did not explode, but turned into a strong impact, and all fell on Estetha's arms. Phew 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 phew. Esteth, who had never been attacked by such a majestic force, looked pale, and she was kicked 20 or 30 meters away by Dustless like a gust of wind. This guy. Estetha's face was extremely gloomy, her arms trembled uncontrollably. This seemingly ordinary kick almost broke her bones. I can be sure that there is no prop like Taigu. But how did this guy do it? Does a human have such a great power? Don't be kidding. Even the super dangerous species can't do this. Esteth touched her numb right arm, and after taking a closer look, she found that there was no scar left on her white wrist. If I didn't work hard to improve my strength in recent years, I am afraid that I would be killed by that kick. Thinking of this, Estetha's face was more heavy and nervous, and even had a hint of depression and vigilance, which had never appeared before. Don't worry. Looking at Esteth, who touched her wrist, Dustless waved his hand and said, I have reduced the power of the light speed kick as much as possible. The power will not hurt you. Anyway, you just saved me from the water. Although you're subordinates and you are arrogant, I am not the kind of person who likes to kill. Estetha's mouth twitched a few times after hearing the words, and she lowered her voice and asked hoarsely, Did you deliberately let me win? What do you think? Dustless seriously spread out his hands and asked calmly, Do you think you are my opponent? Did you just use your own strength to kick me? With your current level, that's impossible. Also, didn't I just say that I'm your natural enemy? Chapter 1595. Estetha's arms continued to tremble. She looked at Dustless with difficulty. Perhaps because of her natural belligerence, instead of flinching, the corners of her mouth were raised high, showing a charming arc. This girl deserves to be the queen of sadism. She can still smile when encountering an enemy that she can't defeat. Dustless was speechless. He stared at Esteth with some entanglement. If it was an ordinary person, he would have been thinking about how to escape. Whoosh! A row of ice dregs was shot head-on. The momentum was like a sharp blade. The number was so large that he couldn't deal with it. Especially the front end of the icicle was jumping with piercing cold light. It may even pierce through the bones. Let me enjoy the fun of fighting. Leaving such a sentence, Death followed the icicle and swooped down. I don't have extra time to play with you. It's more suitable to find a place to fill my stomach. Fighting. Avoid it as much as possible. Dustless looked up at the ice dregs that came head-on and moved his fingers gently. Fire release. Grand fire annihilation. The sea of fire with a diameter of tens of meters roared out. The red fire rolled toward Death, and the ice dregs were evaporated in the blink of an eye. This guy. Death's beautiful gem-like eyes widened, and her mood was a little heavy. To be honest, witnessing the overwhelming flame attack, she was shocked and speechless. No wonder he dares to say that he is my natural enemy. Death's white face was cautious. She immediately stepped on the ground with her feet. Her body ignored the existence of gravity for a moment and flew into the air. Clap, clap, clap. Snapping his fingers a few times in a row, several huge ice meteorites fell from the sky. Flame and ice were two diametrically opposite existences. The moment the ice meteorites appeared, the flame evaporated them. But the moderation of the ice also played a role in cooling down. The sea of fire that was originally monstrous also weakened a lot. Seize this opportunity. Death, who was staring at Dustless, rushed to Dustless like lightning. Seeing his careless face, as if he was dealing with a passerby, Death was furious. This guy really looked down on people too much. Split into two. The ice sword in her hand fell down horizontally, and the cold light went straight to Dustless's head. Death smiled in surprise, and her happy face seemed to find Silver's tragic death. However, in the next second, she realized that she was very wrong. Clang! Clang! The ice sword was not as sharp as expected, but it was unusually slow and ordinary. Looking closely, the cold light was directly caught by Dustless with one hand. Immediately, he exerted a little force, and Death's ice sword made a caw-caw sound. Death's self-esteem collapsed instantly like this cracking sound. Damn it! Seeing this, Death did not admit defeat. Instead, she waved her hand, and dense ice swords came to him. You still can't give up? Dustless shook his head. He thought that Death would give up after a little blow. He did not expect that the gap between her consciousness and Dustless's made her not give up, but she became braver and braver. She wanted to die together with Dustless. Sorry, I've had enough. Looking cold, Dustless's pupils turned faster, and a black flame seemed to swallow the world. Amaterasu. The black flame was like a black hole. It was born out of nothing. It swallowed all the ice cones that came to him, and even the most basic residue was not left. You want to go? At least leave something for me. Death was fierce, and she broke out a fierce aura. Her blue hair stood up, and the area within dozens of meters was instantly turned into ice sculptures. Death made up her mind and shouted, Mokbo Temo! The void was frozen at this moment, and everything stopped. Everything in Death's eyes was petrified and could no longer move. Thank you for pleasing me for so long. Since I got the Taigu, you are the first one who forced me to use this trick. Walking to the front of Dustless, Death grabbed his chin, and the ice sword in her hand stabbed out. A huge bloody hole suddenly appeared in Dustless's body. It's over. Death wiped her sweat tiredly. After a few seconds, the time of her unique skill was also over. Looking at the body on the ground, when she was planning to bury it, she was suddenly dumbfounded. What is this situation? Looking at the wood on the ground, Death's tone increased several times. The body that was pierced by herself suddenly became a pierced wood. Genjutsu. This is Genjutsu. Dustless's lazy tone came out from another direction, and he walked to Death with a chuckle. He said, Your strength is good, but your spiritual power is not good. Genjutsu? Death's face was stiff when she heard the words. She resisted the depression in her heart and asked loudly, When did it start? Why didn't I notice it? There is no need to answer this question. When you saw my Sharingan, it started. Dustless explained, and one of his hands had been inserted into Death's clothes. Get your claws off me. Death noticed the big hand in her arms, and she couldn't help but be furious. She wanted to kick Dustless away, but she found that her body was as weak as if it was emptied. She had no extra strength to deal with Dustless. The big move just now had already been hit by Dustless's genjutsu, and it consumed all the strength of his death. Found it. At this time, Dustless's eyes brightened, and the big hand in Istetha's arms was also taken out. Of course, there was also Istetha's own banknotes. No matter who you are, you need enough money. Goodbye, Miss Isteth. By the way, let me introduce myself. My name is Wu Chen, not the prince you are talking about. Dustless explained while looking for the wallet, and his back gradually disappeared in Istetha's beautiful eyes. Chapter 1596. Istetha's cold eyes were dotted with hostility, and she had an unlucky expression. It was the first time for her to be robbed, and she played the role of the victim. Dustless. Let's wait and see. She slammed the ground with all her strength, ignoring the weakness of her body. Isteth gathered her strength and stood up. Dustless, the strongest enemy she had ever met in her life, was right in front of her. How could she lie on the ground like a coward? But as soon as she stood up straight, Isteth helplessly found that her body seemed to be carrying a mountain. She had to bow again and it was difficult to move. At this moment, even a worm could run faster than her. Lady Isteth. At the same time, the three beasts also woke up from their coma. They looked at each other and quietly examined Isteth, who was in a cold sweat. Their mouths squirmed slightly, needless to say. They knew the final result. Isteth lost. Damn, is that guy so strong? He is obviously just a 17 or 18-year-old boy toy. The three beasts were secretly angry. They didn't expect Dustless to be so abnormal that he could defeat the strongest in the Empire and even the strongest in the world, the sadist General Isteth. You guys strengthen your training for me. I have a hunch that I will meet him again. Isteth ordered coldly. There was not much disappointment on her face. Instead, she was a little happy. Dustless's sudden rise made her boring life have some entertainment additives, which was a blessing in disguise. Boom, boom, boom. The violent roar resounded through the world, and a huge fire burned in the air. Are all the people in this godforsaken place dangerous? Turning his head and looking at the mountain of corpses and blood behind him, Dustless frowned. In less than half an hour, he had crushed hundreds of dangerous species. Even several super dangerous species passing by during the period were killed by him. The direction of the imperial capital should be there. Looking up at the super-large city in front of him, Dustless's eyes extended to the limit, and the scene dozens of kilometers away could be seen at a glance. A sizable city appeared in Dustless's eyes. There was no doubt that it was the so-called imperial capital. About another half an hour later, Wu Chen had just arrived at this decaying city. He found that countless people were staring at him with panicked eyes. They immediately fled for fear of not being able to avoid him. What's going on? I'm not a malefic star. Also, what's with this situation? Do I need to be this unlucky? Dustless complained gloomily. Looking at the figures in front of him, he dashed forward and grabbed one of them. He grabbed the yellow-haired, yellow-faced middle-aged man and asked, "Why did you run when you met me? Give me a reasonable explanation, or I can guarantee that you will be torn into pieces in the next second." As his voice fell, Dustless slightly released his killing intent. The man's face instantly turned pale, and he stared at Dustless in fear. He pointed at the notice board not far away, which was full of wanted posters, and said timidly, "You are wanted." "I see." Dustless heard the words and let go of the middle-aged man in his hand, and immediately walked slowly to the notice board. It was a wanted poster. After a few glances, Dustless found a young man who looked quite similar to himself. "This is the bad prince that Isteth said." Dustless frowned, and he felt that he was shot even though he was lying down. This person was similar to himself in appearance. Let's find a place to eat first. Glancing at the wanted poster next to him, Dustless turned his head and left. His observation hockey spread out and soon found a suitable restaurant. However, Dustless just walked in and scared away a group of people like a jinx. What made him most speechless was that even the boss fled with him. Boom! Immediately after, Wu Chen, who was listening in all directions, realized that there was an uninvited guest. A large number of soldiers scrambled to catch him. Their ferocious appearance was extremely angry. "You are a wanted criminal. And you dare to wander under our eyes. Do you need to be so unscrupulous? You are too arrogant. Are you sure it's him? At the same time, several obscure figures were hiding in the dark alley, staring at Dustless. These people were like dark creatures that couldn't be seen. They were all wearing black robes, as if they couldn't be exposed to the light. From the wanted poster, it should be him, but no one knows whether it is him or not. After all, no one has seen him, and all his guards are dead. Taking a closer look, these people dressed in black robes were none other than the famous assassination organization of the imperial capital Night Raid. But does an imperial prince have anything to do with us? The young man with green hair asked, and there was a hint of rejection in his words. Although the other members didn't say much, their eyes were a little sad. This is a long story. As the boss Najenda explained, this prince is actually the real heir to the emperor, but he was pulled down by the minister. Now he is still being chased. If we can get him to join our revolutionary army, it will be of great help in the future. Can you understand what I mean? Najenda continued, this prince is very important to us. If his news is exposed, we can attack the empire from public opinion, and our revolution will have more advantages. Then let's do it. I will personally bury those rotten soldiers. The black-haired beautiful girl with a katana said calmly, and her eyes were cold. When the entire Night Raid team was about to attack, they quickly found that they were doing something unnecessary, and others didn't need help at all. Chapter 1597. Dustless stared at the soldiers who swarmed over. If possible, he didn't want to attack ordinary humans, but the premise was that they didn't provoke him. Get out of my way. Looking around at the soldiers who surrounded him, Dustless said coldly, you'd better get out of my way before I get angry, otherwise you. However, there were too many self-righteous people in this world. Before Dustless finished his words, this group of people rushed to shout. Bastard. It's just a wanted person, how dare he be so arrogant? Catch this guy and beat him up. Teach him a lesson. Before Dustless finished speaking, the tide-like voices covered Dustless's voice. These idiots pointed at Dustless and scolded him. In their opinion, this guy was a dead man. How could a person who was targeted by Minister Ernest still be alive? It's hard to negotiate. The light in his hand floated. Dustless turned into a flash of light and rushed in like thunder. He was not an indecisive person. Since he gave this group of people a way to live, then they should all die. Pucci! 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 With a wave of his arm, light flickered. With every swing of his blade, countless people were chopped to pieces. A one-sided massacre began mercilessly. Shoot! Someone screamed with a sharp voice, full of fear. Damn! This guy was too scary. He looked harmless on the surface, but according to the current one-sided situation, he was simply a living killing machine. F***ck. A person could be cut into two halves with a casual slash. This was the complete opposite of the weak prince in the intelligence reports. Cough cough cough. At this moment, the people of the Night Raid were also shocked, especially Scarlet Pupil who planned to take Dustless away. She was a little dizzy and looked at Najenda subconsciously. Not only Scarlet Pupil, but other members of the Night Raid also had the same look. The puzzled look was obviously saying, is this a person who is being hunted? Are you sure it's that prince? Everyone, wait a minute. Najenda was embarrassed by the crowd, and at the same time, she stared at Dustless in confusion. This decisive killing and good strength were not what the prince had. No matter what, let's take him away first. Najenda broke out her aura, and immediately led the members of the Night Raid to the place where Dustless was located. It had become hell on earth. The sharpness of the heavenly sword of gathering clouds was too terrifying, and Dustless's strength was too great, to the point that everyone was split in half. What do you guys think of this guy's skills? Najenda suddenly asked. The guy killed so many Imperial soldiers, which is equivalent to completely offending the Empire. Even if he is not the prince, he can also be a member of our Night Raid. Very strong. Bullet gave a thumbs up and praised. I'm sure he's better than me. He slaughtered them so cleanly and without any hesitation. He treated the old, the weak, the sick, and the disabled equally. If he wants to be an assassin, he's definitely qualified. I can feel that he's very strong, Leona chimed in. Humph, although it's good, it's not as good as my Taigu. Mine snorted proudly. It's very clean, and his strength is also very strong. Akame nodded. She was also a master of using the sword. Dustless did not have any gorgeous swordsmanship. It was just the purest strength. That is to say, you all think he is very suitable? Najenda showed a satisfied smile. She also thought that Dustless was good, and now he still had a grudge with the Empire, which also meant that it was impossible to stand on the side of the Empire in the future. For a character like Dustless, if he joined the Empire army, he would definitely be a terrible character like his death in the future. Then the Revolutionary Army would have to pay a heavy price to deal with him. And at the same time, Dustless also discovered the people of the night raid early. In fact, when they hid, Dustless saw the movements of several people. No murderous intent. Staring at several people who came, Dustless did not feel the cold temperament of murderous intent, and he was too lazy to entangle. When he was about to turn and leave, Najenda stopped him. This is... The voice in her mouth stopped abruptly, and Najenda didn't know how to call him. My name is Dustless. Glancing at Najenda, Dustless replied faintly. What's the matter? I don't seem to have anything to do with your night raid, and I'm not rich. The people of the night raid looked at each other when they heard the words. Their target seemed to be those corrupt local tyrants. So many people regarded them as robbers. Are you the Emperor of the Empire? I'm not a prince, sorry, you found the wrong person. Interrupted impatiently. Dustless was depressed. The feeling of being attacked while lying down was really not good. Inexplicably, there were a bunch of enemies. Anyone would feel depressed. Is it? Najenda was not surprised when she heard the words. The information she got said that the prince was weak, and there were even rumors that he was dead. Then, I hope you can become a member of the night raid, and work together for this country. I promise you. Without waiting for Najenda to finish speaking, Dustless didn't even think about it and directly agreed. He didn't even have a place to stay now. It was a good choice to join the night raid temporarily. What's more, he had become a wanted criminal. Since this city couldn't accommodate him, then he just needed to turn the city upside down and change the dynasty. So straightforward? Not only the members of the night raid were stunned, but Najenda was also stunned. She thought that Dustless would deliberately refuse, but she didn't expect this guy to agree so easily. Chapter 1598. So straightforward? Not only were the members of the night raid in a daze, but Najenda was also stunned. She thought that Dustless would deliberately refuse, but who knew that this guy agreed so casually? The members of the night raid were full of doubts. This was too fake. He joined the night raid without any hesitation. Did their boss's charm index increase? That's not right. Even if my charm index increased, it would be me. How could it be the boss? Leonai whispered, and Najenda happened to hear it clearly. She immediately glared at her fiercely. What's your purpose? Najenda asked cautiously. Although she didn't believe that Dustless was a spy, there were some necessary situations that must be clarified. Assassins had their own rules, especially the night raid, which was not an ordinary assassin organization. They were a serious revolutionary army, and the identity of the members must be clear. Purpose? Hearing this, Wu Chen was stunned. He really didn't have any purpose. He subconsciously raised his head and looked at the huge palace. I don't have any great purpose or goal. However, if I have to find a purpose, it's there. Pointing at the beautiful palace, Dustless said coldly. Inexplicably wanted me, it's unforgivable. The members of the night raid looked at each other in dismay. Although it was hard for them to accept Wu Chen, this weirdo, they could barely understand. Just because his appearance was close to that prince, he was wanted, and they even indiscriminately sent people to kill him. If this happened to anyone, it would be hard for them to accept. It was also understandable that he could take revenge on the Empire or the ministers. Quick, don't let those people escape. At this moment, there was a sound of hurried footsteps, and a large number of people ran at the same time. The ground shook slightly, and groups of soldiers rushed like hungry wolves. The mission is completed, everyone retreat. Najenda didn't choose to stay. After all, this was the imperial capital, the enemy's nest. No matter how they fought, they would lose in the end. The outskirts of the empire were filled with beautiful scenery. 3 days later, at the base of the night raid. At this moment, Najenda, as the boss, was sitting in her own position. She spat out her eyes comfortably and held a piece of paper full of information in her hand. After 3 days, the members of Night Raid had accepted Dustless as an intruder. What's done can't be undone. They had no choice but to accept the boss's orders. Furthermore, Dustless's strength was not bad. It was impossible for him to drag them down. He was also very strong. He had even given pointers to Leo, Scarlet Eye, and the others. Therefore, everyone was quite fond of Dustless. Only Lubbock wanted to cry but had no tears. Everyone was curious about Dustless, a newcomer, so he was inevitably isolated. The target of the mission has been confirmed. It's a noble family in the imperial capital. Their methods are extremely vile. After a while, Najenda said angrily, they used sweet words to deceive others, brought passers-by to their home, and then tortured them to death. Unforgivable. Rotten to the core. All these rubbish must be removed. Living rubbish will only pollute the air. After the Revolutionary Army dominates the empire in the future, it will not be so rotten and sad. Boring. In fact, it's all the same. Dustless smiled and said nothing. In fact, there was nothing to despise. Although the empire was rotten to the core, the Revolutionary Army was probably not much better. Because greed was one of the human nature, this was uncontrollable unless all the humans in the world were completely wiped out. What's more, the Revolutionary Army was an organization. There must be internal intrigue. With the slow passage of time, decay was also a matter of time. In the end, you still become the nourishment of my infinite Tsukuyami. Dustless raised his eyebrows slightly and said to himself, I remember that guy Tatsumi seemed to take this opportunity to join the night raid. Anyway, I have nothing to do. It's better to go out and play this time. Is everyone going to attack? Scarlet Eye asked very plainly, but there was a deep pain in her words. She held the katana in her right hand and seemed to be eager to kill the family. Najenda was slightly silent when she heard the words. She looked at Dustless. The other members were all veterans of the night raid. They had performed as many as dozens of missions. Of course, I have no problem. Dustless shrugged when he saw it. What a joke. No matter how strong the enemy was, even if it was a god, how could he be afraid of an ordinary human? That's the best. Najenda's eyes were cold. The evil that justice can't punish, only we can come and kill it with a sword. The night was dark and windy, killing and arson were everywhere. In a luxurious castle like a villa, a few black shadows like crows suddenly flashed in the sky. Everyone's eyes were filled with crimson bloodthirsty light. Several people ignored the existence of gravity and stood quietly in the void. Only people with excellent eyesight and dynamic ability could catch the negligible thin line. This family is really evil. Looking up, staring at the abandoned warehouse in the distance, Dustless couldn't help but shake his head. The air was filled with the chill of decay and desolation. Through the vision of Tensigan, Dustless could see at least hundreds of corpses. Don't leave a single one alive. As soon as Scarlet Eye's voice fell, the people of the night raid jumped from the line and launched a one-sided bloody massacre. All the living creatures that they saw were killed. After all, they were assassins. There was no distinction between men and women, old and young. All the people of this family were killed. Chapter 1599. All in all, in a word, it was enough to kill one person. If there were two, he would kill a pair. It's really boring, killing those weak people. It's just an excuse to leave it to them. As for me. In the luxurious villa, Dustless wandered around. The life of this family was quite luxurious. The castle covered a large area, and there were countless corridors and corners. Strange, where did that guy go? Dustless murmured secretly, and carefully searched every room. He was looking for a person. Tatsumi. However, it seemed that there was no trace of Tatsumi even after searching the whole villa. Did I remember it wrong? Dustless said to himself. These were the memories of hundreds of years ago in his mind. After all, he had traveled for hundreds of years. It was normal for his memory to have some deviations. On the other side, the night raid was killing this family with all their strength. There were too many people in this family, especially countless servants, and professional soldiers. Obviously, they had a big background. Killing people was fast when everyone did it, but there were also some people who were lazy, such as Dustless. He had been wandering around in boredom, and he didn't kill anyone for a long time. Hey, hey, hey! Suddenly there was a dissatisfied complaint behind him. Dustless was stunned. He turned his head and saw a pretty girl with a pink double ponytail. Her appearance was delicate, her facial features were flawless, her bright eyes were as eye-catching as the moon, and her pink skirt was quite wonderful with her young body. The girl's figure was not plump, but it was undeniable that she was a person who knew how to dress herself very well. Her short body was not disappointing. Combined with her pink skirt, it made people's eyes brighten. This girl with an extraordinary appearance was mine, the Night Raid's Night Raid. I'm performing a task, didn't you see? Dustless asked with a smile. Performing a task? Looking at Dustless suspiciously, Mine looked around and asked, Where are the people you killed? I have been seeing you walking like an old man. You are lazy, right? Mine asked loudly with her chest out. Dustless was powerful, but he turned a deaf ear to the fleeing crowd around him. What was he if not being lazy? Seriously, your breasts aren't big, what's there to stick out? Dustless lowered his head and complained. His voice was as soft as a mosquito, but he was too close to Mine, so all these words fell into her ears. Mine stomped her feet angrily and immediately said with a straight face, I'm going to report this to the boss, saying that you are slacking off in the process of performing the task. As soon as the voice fell, Mine looked at Dustless with delight. Her proud look was obviously saying, Beg me. However, Dustless did not pay attention to her. No, I'm not slacking off. I'm protecting you. Dustless glanced at the blurry black figure walking deeper into the forest and said calmly, As a sniper, your close combat ability is too weak. I'll follow you and be in charge of close combat. Protect me? Humph. What a load of nonsense. Mine hummed proudly and said loudly, Your excuse is useless. You didn't kill anyone. I will report all to the boss. I didn't use your reward for this mission. After saying that, Mine turned and left. However, at the moment when she just turned around, a black figure with flashing red eyes came quickly. It almost came to the front of Mine in an instant, and the big sword with cold light slashed toward Mine's head. All this happened in a flash, so that Mine was a little dazed. Your sniping is good, but your close combat is as-oh. If the enemy gets close to you, the disadvantage is too big. Dustless glanced at the attacker who was barely good, and flicked a light from his finger. Laser. A straight beam of light shot out and went straight to the person. Puff. There was suddenly a light on the head, and it was killed by the light from Dustless's fingertips. The person fell down unwillingly, and the big sword was a little distance away from crushing Mine. Damn it! Mine, who came back to her senses, scolded her carelessness. She just quarreled with Dustless, so she didn't notice the approaching attacker for the first time. If it weren't for Dustless, maybe her head would be separated from her body. I reluctantly recognize you, Mine said with a red face, and she was quite unwilling. Dustless stared at Mine maliciously after hearing the words. He put Mine in a checkmate and said with a smile, It's a big problem to be absent-minded when performing the task. I will report it to the boss as it is. You heartless guy. Mine pointed at Dustless's nose and scolded. Her hard-earned good impression of Dustless disappeared instantly. Dustless didn't say much after hearing the words. He just looked at the warehouse in the distance quietly. There was a strange color in his eyes that was difficult to detect. He vaguely understood why he didn't meet Tatsumi. Is it possible that Tatsumi was caught and tortured by this family? Dustless looked contemplative. The character of this family was so dark and cold that they deceived all the poor people who slept on the street into their home and then tortured them severely. Phew phew phew. At the same time, all the members of the night raid completed the task and appeared one after another. There is still a dirty place that has not been solved. We can retreat after burning the warehouse full of rotten smell. Pointing to the abandoned warehouse in the distance, Scarlet Pupil took the lead to rush there. I hope that Tatsumi dies. Following the footsteps of Scarlet Pupil, Dustless prayed silently. I can smell a disgusting stench from afar. Leonette took the lead to smash the door of the abandoned warehouse. As Dustless had guessed before, a devastated wail entered the eyes of several people. Come and save me, my name is Tatsumi. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.